Hey guys, welcome back to the channel. This is a story about what if Deku fell for a villain he met by chance part 1. If you guys enjoy this what if and want to see part 2, comment down below and let me know before I start. Please do support for more awesome content. And leave a like and don't forget to subscribe to my channel and also share this video with your friends and check out the description in my playlist. The author of the story ZerocoolD from 𝐽3. So let's start the video. Natsuo entered his new apartment complex. He had just moved in at the end of summer, in time for the start of his second year of college. After his first year of staying in the dorms, he decided that life wasn't for him. Every Friday when he wanted to finish his homework early and study the week's notes, he'd be plagued and disturbed by rowdy roommates and drunk neighbors. Plus, it was a hassle always cleaning up after his roommate. Now, he just wanted to focus on his studies and his medical career. Natsuo was a preemed student, aspiring to become a pediatrics physician and surgeon one day. He liked working with kids, and more than anything else he wanted to ease their pain any way he could. He wasn't able to save his siblings, or 𝗀𝐻, but one day he'd get the chance to save a kid just like him. 𝗀𝗄 dialed his sister after placing his duffel bag on the couch. "Hello, hey 𝐴𝐻, it's me. Just wanted to let you know I made it back safe." "Okay, that's great news. You'll have everything you need in the apartment. I stocked up on Friday, before I left to stay with you guys for the weekend," Natsuo told. Many weekends the teen would go back home to spend quality and lost time with his siblings. "Okay, cool. Then take care of yourself. Don't work too hard." "Yeah, I know. Anyways, I got classes tomorrow, so see ya. Bye." With that, 𝐴𝐻 hung up the call. It was well after dark and Natsuo was the last one to leave the lab. He was in charge of closing the lab that evening, so he had to assure everything was put away and stocked up. 𝗀𝗄 locked the door and walked out with his bag, feeling exhausted. Some days were just too long. Their lab was situated outside the main campus buildings, so he exited through the back door facing the streets. That route was also closer to his apartment. The teen walked a few steps until a dark figure suddenly appeared before him, startling him. The figure stood mildly bent, holding onto the side of their stomach right in front of him, staggering as they knocked into some empty boxes. Natsuo immediately froze and stood his guard, eyes not peering away even for a moment. Was he going to get robbed or something? That person looked shady as hell. Well, if anything, he could at least fight back. Man, really not what he needed right now. It was difficult to view the figure in the dark night, until they stepped under the bright light of the lamp post and Natsuo was able to get a better look. It was a young man, slightly shorter than him, with burns and staples all over and spiky black hair. He seemed to be bleeding, but 𝗀𝗄 couldn't stare for long before the figure tripped and fell on himself. Natsuo impulsively stepped forward to check on the man, who grunted in pain as he knelt on the ground. Excuse me, are you okay?" 𝐹𝐻𝐶K, the man hissed. "Do I look okay?" 𝗀𝗟 irritatingly looked up at him, but his eyes widened when he saw who he was staring at. Natsuo, his younger brother, who he hadn't seen for years, was gazing down at him with big concerning eyes like nothing. What were the odds? Right, that wasn't a smart question, Natsuo admitted, oblivious to the fact that the other had recognized him. 𝗀𝗟 didn't realize he was staring at the younger like a deer in headlights until Natsuo raised his hands. "Don't worry, man. I'm not gonna hurt you or take advantage you," he naively reassured, assuming the villain was staring at him out of fear of his weakened state. "You can trust me." 𝗀𝗟 lowered his head, both of them sitting there in awkward silence. The teen looked conflicted but ultimately went with the right decision. "Do you want me to take you to a hospital? Or call someone?" "No," 𝗀𝗟 sternly stated. "No hospitals." Natsuo raised a confused brow. "But you're bleeding." "I'm fine." The villain was less irate than he initially was. "It'll heal." 𝗀𝗄 doubted that. Not from the way the other's white shirt was all drenched in blood. The teen sighed. It looks like he had no choice. And while he had a million of questions, he knew those would have to be addressed later. "You're so stubborn." "Fine, then come with me." To 𝗀𝗟's surprise, the teen helped him up and led him to the lab door, fumbling with the keys and unlocking it. 𝗀𝗟 didn't have the energy to argue, and truthfully the wound was becoming quite distracting and painful. "Aren't you lucky I was in charge of closing the medical lab today?" he remarked with an innocent grin. The villain only stared at him blankly before uttering, "You sure you want to help me?" Natsuo backtracked, with a vague idea of what the other might be insinuating. "I don't know you," he deadpanned in the end. "So villain, or hero, you're still a patient in my eyes and my job is to help you." The teen wasn't one to keep up with the news, especially not when he was already swamped with classes, labs, and other assignments. Furthermore, he wasn't involved with the heroes, so he wouldn't know any better. 𝗀𝗟 wasn't sure if that was the answer he was expecting, but knowing Natsuo, he was relieved by it nonetheless. He hadn't changed at all. The villain really didn't deserve to be back in his life with all his baggage, and therefore vowed to never reveal his true identity to him. Natsuo sat the other on an examining bench and hastily gathered medical supplies for cleaning, disinfecting, and bandaging. "Show me the injury," he mouthed, and the villain complied. The Ravenet pulled up his shirt to reveal a large abrasion near his lower ribs close to his stomach. The superficial skin had been torn off and the villain continued to bleed at every movement. There were also minor burns around the area, to which Natsuo presumed just made the injury worse. Luckily, it wasn't dermal or subcutaneous level deep. He just needed to clean, disinfect, medicate, and wrap it up. "Can you hold your shirt up?" Natsuo requested, after the villain removed the trench coat. Again, to his mild surprise, the Ravenet silently obliged to every request. Natsuo instructed the other to lay down as it'd be easier for him to work on the wound and soon got busy. After patching the area locally, Natsuo had the other sit up again so he could use medical dressing to wrap it all around his waist to secure the bandage. The teen let out a tired sigh of relief. "Done. Now let me see if we have any sample painkillers I can give you." He rummaged through the drawers. "It's quite large, you have to take care of it." "Heh, I'll live. I've been through worse." 𝗫𝗫 waved nonchalantly. "I got joints at home I could smoke." Upon that, the 𝐲𝗏𝗟 gave him an obviously disapproving look. "No, if you're here, I might as well find some for you." "What were you even doing? Who was after you?" 𝗫𝗫 stared back at him, like the answer was so conspicuous that he needn't say anything. "Right, never mind. Of course fighting someone probably." The teen sighed. "I really don't get it some days." Murmuring the second part to himself, he pulled out a few painkillers and handed them to 𝗫𝗫. "Now technically you should be back in a day or two to change the dressing and inspect it." "Yeah, not happening." "Right, then, just don't get it wet." The younger surrendered, because realistically, even if the other did come back, he wouldn't be helped and sent straight to the hospital. Natsuo couldn't do any more than this either. "I owe you, kid." 𝗫𝗫 went on his way, leaving Natsuo to close the lab once again. As predicted, 2 days later, the villain didn't show up at all. It wasn't until a few days after that Natsuo noticed when he was in the same lab again. "Oh well, I figured as much. These people know how to survive. An injury like that probably isn't the biggest deal," he told himself, but he still wondered if the other was even still alive. Another 2 weeks went by before Natsuo was shutting down the same lab, and as usual, he exited through the back door. However, to his absolute shock, he found an all too familiar figure waiting right outside for him. The teen blinked as the silhouette stepped out of the shadows. It was the Ravenet. It was a Tuesday again, the day he was in charge of locking the lab. 𝗫𝗫 must have remembered that. Meanwhile, Natsuo only stared at him speechlessly, not anticipating him to willingly walk back, since he seemed like the standoffish, elusive type who wouldn't want to ask for help. "Didn't expect to see me so soon." No." The teen snapped out of his trance, hoping he didn't come across too rude. "I don't want to be here either, but this is easier. It's also in the way." That may or may not have been true. "And you did a pretty good job." The villain grinned. "I'm still a student," Natsuo reminded, still not sure if this was all a good idea. The first time around was out of kindness, but now he didn't want to be responsible if anything went gravely wrong. Moreover, he didn't know if he wanted to be involved with such a troublesome person. It'd be difficult for him too. Natsuo's body language said it all, and 𝗫𝗫's smile vanished. "On second thought, you didn't see me." The villain was unreadable most of the time, but Natsuo thought he may have seen a flash of hurt shimmer in those bright turquoise eyes. Turquoise eyes. Natsuo noticed the first time as well that his eyes were so bright. They were practically the only things that glowed in the moonlight. They resembled exactly like the eyes of someone he knew. Wait then. I probably can't help you every time, but since you're here, what happened?" The 𝐲𝗏𝗟 felt guilty for sending him off just like that, even if he had no obligation to help. 𝗫𝗫 glanced sideways once, studying their surroundings. "Let's go inside." This time Natsuo complied as they re-entered the lab. The Ravenet sounded much more authoritative than last time. When they got settled, 𝗫𝗫 showed him the fresh cut on his already burnt arm. Natsuo was very distracted last time, but today he was able to get a better look at all the purple burns on the villain's arms, face and neck, or the parts that were visible from his clothes. The teen wanted to ask but knew it wasn't any of his business. At the same time, he also didn't expect the Ravenet to answer. Natsuo sheathed the cut on his arm with a fresh dressing and held onto the lithe wrist for a second longer, thumb idly grazing the old burns before he slowly let go. The 𝐲𝗏𝗟 threw away the bloody tissues and placed the other tools in the disinfecting tray. "The skin is burnt and cut, on top of already burnt skin, so the recovery will take longer than usual," Natsuo told. "Yeah, I know." 𝗫𝗫 dismissed. There was a moment of pause between them. "Were these burns left untreated?" Natsuo indirectly asked about the burns, curious to know more since the moment he laid eyes on them. "Something like that." Of course, he didn't want to explain it to him. Anyways, how's the wound?" The Ravenet gave him a puzzled look. "From that time." Fine, I guess." The villain shrugged and the 𝐲𝗏𝗟 shot him an incredulous look. He clearly didn't trust him. "Then can I take a look?" "Obstinate much. I'm telling you it's fine, just to be sure, you're here anyways." Natsuo pressed. "Do whatever." 𝗫𝗫 only gave in because it was Natsuo. He wouldn't entertain the idea with anyone else. The villain pushed aside the trench coat and lifted his dusty white shirt. 𝐷𝗀𝐻 took a look, and right off the bat he could tell that it was healing, but it didn't look as proper as it should. It was red and moist. Wait, where were the bandages? Why isn't it covered? The 𝐴𝐴 urgently asked. It's still an open wound. It's a miracle it's not infected by now. Also considering the fact that 𝗵𝗲's clothes and skin were dirty from whatever battling he was doing before he came here. I couldn't afford any more bandages. Gotta save him for life and death moments, you know. 𝗵𝗲 nonchalantly explained. This is mostly healed anyway. What? No, it isn't. The teen emphasized, dropping the formalities naturally as the preemed student in him was fretting. The 𝐴𝐴 fetched another patch of gauze and alcohol to clean the healing wound. PFFFT. 𝗵𝗲 held back a chuckle as he pursed his lips, sitting back and watching the teen wholeheartedly take care of him. He hadn't gotten that kind of special treatment in a long while. There, 𝗵𝗀 huffed. I can't give you any more supplies, but that should keep it nice and safe for a good while. And again, don't get it wet and don't remove the bandages. Yeah, I hear you, Doc. The villain smiled, looking up at him. 𝗵𝗀 blushed faintly, caught off guard at that. He was nowhere near a doctor yet, but it was still flattering to hear. Furthermore, that was the first time he saw the villain smile and act so casually around him. His carefree and aloof attitude also really reminded him of that said someone. His brother. Every time the villain acted in those mannerisms, he found himself not able to turn away from him. Speaking of which, he was appalled that he was even having a conversation and acting so normal with a potential villain to begin with. Guess they were human too after all. Anyways, I better get going. 𝗵𝗲 hopped off the bench. Amen. The 𝐴𝐴 merely stood there, a part of him wanting to know more. Was he really a villain? What did he do? Why do it? The elder noticed the teen hadn't followed him or made any attempt to move. What's up? 𝗵𝗲 asked. Nothing. The 𝐴𝐴 shook his head, pushing those thoughts away. Just take care of yourself. He dismissed. He couldn't explain it himself. Why was he so intrigued? 𝗵𝗲 shrugged it off and left. It was the weekend, and 𝗵𝗀 went back home to his siblings. It also just happened to fall on a certain remorseful day that he didn't want to talk about. Every year this day, 𝗵𝗀 was edgy, short-tempered, gloomy, and all of the above emotions fluctuated in him. Shoto, Fayumi, and 𝗵𝗀 were having dinner that day, but for obvious reasons the 𝐴𝐴 didn't have an appetite. I'm done, sorry Fayumi, but I'm gonna turn in early. The teen stood up from their low table and dropped his dishes in the kitchen before heading to his room. Shoto watched as the teen left. What's up with him? He had noticed a frown on his elder brother's face the entire time they were on the table. Probably because it's that day. Fayumi spoke after giving it some thought. What day? Tauya's death anniversary, she solemnly stated. Oh, Shoto didn't have a comeback to that. Before 𝗵𝗀 went to his room though, he stopped by the altar with 13-year-old Tauya's portrait frame on it. On days like these he hated being at home. His home, the place where they spent their entire life. It was practically swarmed with so many memories that always flooded his conscience. And there were always bad ones more than good ones. Every time, he could never sleep peacefully at night either. After a short blank visit to the altar, the 𝐴𝐴 finally retreated to his room, washing up and climbing into his futon. The 𝐴𝐴 lay there for what seemed like literal hours, not finding a wink of sleep anytime soon. Even so, he tried to force himself to sleep. He didn't want to worry Fayumi and Shoto any further than he already had. They probably knew what was up, especially Fayumi. At around 1 a.m., he gave up and pulled off the covers. He stood up with an annoyed sigh and searched for a hoodie. The weather wasn't cold, but it could still get quite chilly during the night. He put on his shoes and very silently slipped out of the house. The teen brought his headphones along and plugged them into his ears as he strolled down the dead streets. 𝗵𝗀 inhaled and exhaled the cool breeze, feeling a tad refreshed but not entirely lighter. While his songs played, he kept walking and walking absent-mindedly, closing his eyes here and there, tuning out the world around him. At least it was nice and peaceful. He walked for another 10 minutes before he took in his surroundings and momentarily halted. Where did he end up walking to? He imagined he couldn't have been too far from home, but at the same time, he became so apathetic tonight that he didn't care less where he was walking to, as long as he was away from all the memories. 𝗵𝗀 took a few more steps until he saw something akin to a fire, and he was sure his eyes were playing tricks on him. He walked a bit closer, but still a fair distance away, when he suddenly noticed a person beside the blue flame. The person alarmed him. He was dressed in all black, a black hoodie, black pants, and 𝗵𝗀 would have missed him if it wasn't for the flames illuminating the figure. He should quietly walk away before he was discovered. The 𝐴𝐴 thought as the man's back was turned to him. What fun is standing there? A voice that sounded oddly familiar was directed at him. One moment he was staring at the back of this unknown figure, and the next moment a small blazing blue flame was expanding in his vision, coming towards him. 𝗵𝗀 instantly moved out of the way, ultimately falling to the ground backwards. What the hell? The 𝐴𝐴 groaned. The man almost burned him there, even if it was a relatively smaller flame. The teen's heart was racing out of fear by this point. The black figure finally turned around and stared speechless at what turned out to be his brother. Wasn't he grateful he chose to use a low-powered flame? My bad, 𝗵𝗃 mouthed, and 𝐻𝐸 finally recognized the voice. Didn't know it was you there, Doc. The 𝐲𝗏𝗟 furrowed his eyebrows at him. Geez, he gave him such a scare and now he's acting so casual about it? Really? 𝐻𝐸 somewhat recognized the face. It was difficult because of the darkness and the hood draped over. Did you lose your way? At this time of night, 𝗵𝗃 was genuinely surprised, and his tone was a mix of amusement and amazement. The 𝐲𝗏𝗟 only sat there, contemplating his life, wondering if he still had the opportunity to turn tail and run. Doc, what are you doing? 𝐻𝐸 pathetically let out, getting off the ground and staring at him skeptically. However, it didn't seem like he had a choice because the 𝗏𝗟 was gazing at him in a way that was virtually telling him to join him or at least not elope. The teen still found him mysterious and dangerous, but to his better judgment, he did, slowly walking towards him but maintaining a safe distance. Are you trying to set the entire city on fire or something? 𝐻𝐸 referred to the random fire in front of them. PFFFFD. As if that's possible, I wish. 𝐻𝐸 passed him a sour look. He then noticed a bench near them in the public park area they were at and headed towards it. So, what brings you here? The younger sat down on the bench, hunched forward, with his chin on his palm, glaring down at the ground. I didn't plan to come here, just didn't realize and ended up here, he emotionlessly told. That's new, 𝗵𝗃 said, evoking a baffled expression from 𝐻𝐸. Something's bothering you. The villain read him like an open book, that it was more of a statement than a question. The teen was impressed at how easily the villain recognized that. Was he really that easy to read, or was the other just very good at it? Nothing. He wasn't in the mood to start spilling his guts to a stranger. Plus, he didn't even know where to begin even if he did. I just hate today, 𝐻𝐸 eventually mouthed, staring aimlessly at the blue flames flaring in the dark. Blue flames, just like Taoya's. The thought crossed his mind. The 𝐲𝗏𝗟 peeked at 𝗵𝗃, who was staring at the flames before him. But there was no way he could be Taoya. Firstly, they looked nothing alike. Secondly, 𝗬𝗟 wouldn't just leave them without telling at least one of them, and on top of that become a villain. Maybe it wasn't such an uncommon quirk. Me too, 𝗵𝗃 said, grabbing 𝐻𝐸's attention. The teen looked at him for seriousness, and not mockery. Every year. Today. Sucks. Same, 𝗵𝗟 softly concurred. Wow, he didn't think they'd have something to actually relate on. The 𝐲𝗏𝗟 was tired of acting like a sulking kid, so he flipped the question. He wasn't too interested, but at the same time, needed a distraction. Is that what's up with the fire? What are you burning? The villain locked eyes with him for a brief second before staring back at the flames. He hated it because it was the day he disappeared. While that should be a very good thing, he still couldn't stop all the agitating memories and bitterness that haunted him this day every year. All the reminders that even past the dyed hair and burns, he was still a Todoroki. So one year, he finally decided to burn some of his old stuff. It was rather satisfying. Then at one point, he ran out of things to burn and simply needed a fire to provide the same comfort to his brain. Memories, 𝗵𝗃 answered at last. What? Exactly what it sounds like. It's figurative, but helps. Wanna try? 𝐻𝐸 raised a puzzled brow. But he didn't want to burn the memories of Taoya. He thought as he looked into the unwavering, sad turquoise eyes that gleamed back at him. God, they were so captivating, unlike his gray eyes. The 𝐲𝗏𝗟 couldn't gaze away. No, it's okay. He didn't have anything on him to contribute to the fire anyways. That's when it hit him that he was chilling with a villain in the middle of the night. How could he be so comfortable with him? Maybe cause he reminded him of 𝗬𝗟 so much. From the eyes to the physique all the way to the quirk now. The universe was so cruel to him, 𝗵𝗟 thought. That's no fun. The 𝗏𝗟 took long strides towards the bench and sat down next to him, throwing him off guard. They both sat in silence, each bothered by their own trauma, with the fire crackling beside them. Funny, none of them found the atmosphere awkward as they sat for a good long minute in the silent abysmal night, which engulfed them. When 𝗵𝗟 processed that, he began to feel a tad fidgety, wanting to say something but coming up with nothing. You want a candy? 𝗵𝗃 spoke up first. I want to smoke but forgot to bring my cigarettes. The cold was seeping in between his staples and the special cigarettes he had helped numb the pain a bit. However, he was so frustrated and out of it that he forgot to grab them on the way out. 𝗵𝗃 shuffled through his pockets and pulled something out, holding it out for 𝗵𝗟, who only stared suspiciously. 𝗵𝗃 sighed, grabbing the other's hand and putting a piece of candy in his palm. The 𝐲𝗏𝗟 noticed how cold the other's hands were. Who knows, it'll cheer you up, med student. 𝗵𝗟 turned it over in his hand. Black cherry. Ew. Hey, the villain took offense to that. Ungrateful, huh? Beggars can't be choosers. Sorry. Thanks. I just don't eat candy that much. 𝗵𝗟, being the respectful, well-raised person, automatically felt guilty. I know. The words nearly escaped the 𝗏𝗟's tongue. The teen watched as 𝗵𝗃 took another one out and plopped it into his mouth, also letting go of Natsuo's hand. "How are your hands so cold? With a quirk so hot?" the Silverette curiously asked, stuffing the candy in his pocket. 𝗫𝗵 played with the candy in his mouth with his tongue. "My body constitution is the opposite of my quirk. I'm pretty adept to the cold." Upon that response, Natsuo literally spun his entire body around to look at him with wide eyes. "What? Is it that shocking?" "No, it's just, me too. My body is also the opposite of my quirk. I've just never met anyone who also." Natsuo trailed off. It was very uncommon to have an incompatible body constitution, but wow, what were the odds? Wait, then does that explain the burns? It all clicked now. Amen. The Ravenet didn't say anything to that, confirming it. "My quirk is pretty weak, but it's ice. But my body temperature is so hot, most of the time, it melts before I can fully exert it. Plus sometimes it gives me frostbite if I overdo it, haha." He felt compelled to share. "That's why I just stopped using it. 𝐴𝐻𝐻. Listened, though. Natsuo stopped talking after that, believing the villain wasn't all that interested. Why would he be after all? But oddly enough, he felt closer to him. It was really hard to describe their relationship now. Not friends, but not enemies. And acquaintances was a weird way to put it. Natsuo glanced down at the time on his phone once. It was 2:30 a.m. He should really be heading back now. Tomorrow was Sunday. He was off, but he had to travel back to his apartment in the afternoon. "I should be going now. Don't get lost again," the villain teased. "I didn't get lost," the younger clarified, but 𝗫𝗵 only chuckled at him. The teen followed his GPS and went his way, glancing back at the villain once, who continued to sit there, unmoved. Natsuo returned home, slowly locking the door and tiptoeing to his room. He wasn't going to lie, he felt a little better right now. So, he hoped whatever that was bothering his new friend on this particular day was also soothed a bit. The teen fell on his futon and went straight to sleep. The next day, he woke up late in the afternoon. He had a mild headache, but nothing a coffee couldn't fix. Later that afternoon, he packed his duffel bag and walked to the door. "I'm out. See you guys next week," he called out, saying his goodbyes to Fayumi and Shoto. "Travel safe." Their sister waved. "Bye, take care," Shoto said. Natsuo walked outside, stuffing his hands in his pocket until he came across a candy. Taking it out, he surveyed it. It was the one from last night. The teen unwrapped the wrapper and tossed it in his mouth. Not bad. He tasted it on his tongue, swirling it around. Not his flavor, but it was certainly an interesting one. He could get used to it. Natsuo finished his classes early and walked outside his campus to a nearby cafe that he frequented often for a quick bite and a pick-me-up coffee. He ordered a sandwich with some coffee to keep him running for the rest of the day since it was only the afternoon and he had a ton of work to get done. While the teen sat and enjoyed his meal, he thought the ground shuddered once. Brushing it off, he looked at his phone for the sake of some entertainment. However, he nearly bit his tongue when the entire cafe shook violently. "What the?" The Silverette put his half-eaten sandwich down and held his coffee cup to prevent it from spilling over. Natsuo swallowed hard when he gazed out the glass walls to see people running frantically and screaming. He further extended his neck to get a good look and saw smoke and debris from a faraway building being demolished. "What the hell is going on?" he sighed. Not another villain attack. Shit. It was dangerous. He had to leave. The teen took a large gulp out of his coffee and packed the sandwich in his bag before running out. This part of town was pretty uneventful since it wasn't the main city, but once in a while they would be subjected to something like this. The streets were crowded, people running into each other, crying out loud, like something was gaining up on them. The Silverette looked behind him and near the ruins of the buildings spotted a huge mutated creature going berserk. Natsuo grimaced in absolute disgust and fear. What the hell was that? Geez, why couldn't they just leave the normal civilians alone? Wasn't it the heroes they wanted? Soon enough, he also noticed US students and some heroes approaching the scene. Among them he recognized Shoto, who also spotted him fairly quickly despite the crowd. The younger teen automatically leaped over to him. "Hey Shoto, what's going on?" Natsuo impatiently inquired. "A Namu." "A what?" "Namu. These monster-like creatures that Shigara, the League of Villains, created. I can't keep up with the world anymore." Upon that, Shoto gave him a look that read, "When did you ever? Just get to a safer distance." The dual-haired instructed. "Already on it, lil bro. You take care as well," Natsuo urged. Shoto nodded and left to help his classmates. Natsuo barely made it a few streets away from the incident when he ran across a lizard person and tall muscular redhead. The pair were harassing and threatening some of the civilians and joked at their expense later. Natsuo clenched his fists. What was the point of all those justice-obsessed heroes when this was still going on? The Silverette felt furious, frustrated and betrayed to say the least. He wasn't a hero. He couldn't take them on. Are all villains so low? Before he knew it, the bitter words were out of his mouth. The pair stopped cornering a poor girl and turned to him. "You heard something, Spinner," the redhead exclaimed out loud, sticking a pinky in her ear. "Nah, I don't think so." "You, the lizard villain," Spinner responded. "I think I heard a fly." Hahaha, 𝐹𝐴 them. Natsuo glared in vain. Seriously? He mouthed at their immaturity. That was your cue to leave, but looks like someone doesn't get it. The redhead was right up in his face now, and before Natsuo could take a stance, he was punched mercilessly in the guts once. That punch alone had him convulsing forward and dropping on his knees. Trina play hero ha. Spinner grabbed a lockful of his spiky hair and forced him to look up. Erg, never. The teen continued to glare. I don't like this kid's face. Magni, the redhead, clicked her tongue. Me neither. Why isn't he trembling yet? You want to take him back and teach him a lesson? Spinner grinned, and Natsuo didn't at all like the sound of that. He was about to regret all of this very soon. One more punch and he was out like a light. Natsuo woke up to being kicked, quickly realizing his hands tied behind his back. He cracked his eyes open to ceiling lights, neither of which he recognized. Standing over him were also a few extra people, all villains he assumed as he noted the lizard and redhead from before among them. Slept long enough. He earned another kick along the arm from the redhead. The teen stifled his groans, not willing to appear too weak or defeated yet. He still couldn't identify his location, but it looked like some unused bar with a lot of open space in the middle, 2 worn-out couches against the wall, and an empty bar counter on the other side with bar stools. Their lair, maybe. Not long after, a few more villains walked in chattering. Yo, we caught someone, Spinner boasted. Someone from the Hero Academy. One of the random villains sounded excited as he asked. Not just some random punk. What the hell? What's the point? The other villain snarled. 𝗬𝗲 had also walked in right behind the other villains, uninterestingly glancing towards the commotion. He was acting all tough, just wanted to give him a lesson. Spinner reasoned. Shigaraki said not to waste time. The League of Villains got better things to do. Geez, I'm gonna let him out after I give him a scare. That's it. Big deal. Shiggy'll never know. Spinner told until he saw 𝗬𝗲 and directed his attention to him. Yo 𝗬𝗲, you wanna play with him? What the hell are you idiots going on about? The 𝗏𝗏 huffed annoyed as he stepped closer, and the villains made room for him, finally revealing their hostage. Natsuo looked up and instantly registered the other, staring at him with wide eyes as his head shot up. 𝗬𝗲 also stared down at him with disbelief but recognition. However, the 𝗏𝗏 immediately looked away, pretending he didn't know the other at all. I don't have time for this. You guys are dumb. The 𝗏𝗏 deadpanned and turned away to take a seat on the couch that was directly across from them. Shit, how the hell did you manage to get yourself caught like this, Natsuo? He secretly exuded a troubled sigh as he held his forehead. Meanwhile, Natsuo was about to have hope that maybe by the grace of God or something, 𝗬𝗲 would somehow get him out of this pickle. He was shocked but nearly relieved to see the other. Albeit, when the 𝗏𝗏 walked away like nothing at all, he felt full-on betrayed. A bigger punch to the guts than any of the ones the redhead had been throwing at him. This was also when he felt his world crashing down on him. The realization that no one was going to help him, and there was no way out, while he'd probably be beaten to death by some low-lives and none of his family would ever know. His heart sunk at the feeling as he felt another punch straight in his face. Natsuo opened his eyes, focusing directly at 𝗬𝗲, glaring at him while he merely stared back expressionlessly. What did he expect? Looks like he was a villain after all. All that bullshit about how they connected ... felt closer. Was all in his head, it seemed. Stop glaring. Magni lifted him from the collar. He earned one more punch, splitting the corner of his lips, making him taste blood. I changed my mind. A voice interrupted them. Everyone in the room turned to that said voice. 𝗬𝗲, put him in the dungeon. He couldn't resist yourself, could ya? Magni giggled. Yo, I got food. Another voice chimed in from the door. All the villains were effortlessly distracted by that and dashed towards him. At the same time, one of the underlings grabbed Natsuo up and dragged him to the basement where they had a few rooms converted into empty cells for captivity. Natsuo felt numb. It was as if he accepted his fate to rot away at this point. This place was sick. The teen was left alone with his foreboding thoughts in the empty room on a mattress-less bed with his hands still tied. The wooden door creaked open and he couldn't even tell if it was worth looking up. But that still didn't stop him from doing so. He saw 𝗬𝗲 walk in, dragging a metal chair, eventually sitting on it backwards, facing him. The silverette only glowered at him. You don't have to look that sour. Natsuo's frown only deepened. 𝐹𝐴 off. Ouch, so you really are a villain. And I never said I wasn't. Of course, the teen grudgingly scoffed. So much for building trust or being comfortable with each other. Guess it's true, you can't trust anyone anymore. So what do you plan on doing now, 𝗬𝗲? 𝗬𝗲 couldn't tell if he should be offended or not by the way the teen emphasized his name. I'm not doing anything. What about you? The 𝗏𝗏 resorted to acting carefree as usual. What? Why are you just sitting there? The 𝗏𝗏 knowingly smiled, glancing at the door once. When the door's wide open, Natsuo shot him a stunned look as he followed his gaze to the door. He hadn't realized, but 𝗬𝗲 never shut or locked the door. It was wide open in front of him. Was he telling him to run? His hands were still tied, but his feet weren't. Wait, but what if this is some kinda sick trap? He wanted him to run for his life, but just to be caught by 𝗵𝗿 and thrown down again, since the other was sitting right there in front of him. Natsuo raked his brain. That's right, he didn't stop those goons from kicking me. Why would he help me escape? But then again, what would the League of Villains want from me? 𝗵𝗿 stood up, catching his attention before he could overthink this any further. He sauntered over to Natsuo, who negligibly flinched when he was standing so close. The ravnet came even closer though, chin nearly resting on his shoulder as the elder reached for something behind him, it seemed. The silverette shut his eyes until he felt intense heat near his wrists, and then the ropes came undone. Did 𝗵𝗿 just burn the ropes? Natsuo didn't know what to think. He then looked past the ravnet's shoulder to the open, inviting door again. There's a secret exit on the left. He suddenly heard 𝗵𝗿's smooth voice whisper in his ear, cool breath tickling his cheek. He could virtually smell the cigarette smoke from the other with this level of proximity. The younger needn't any more convincing than that. He grabbed his bag, shoved the ravnet aside roughly, and ran for the door, not looking back even once as he turned left at the hallway and found a heavy metal door. There was no one in the basement, but he was still haunted by the loud voices of the other villains upstairs. The teen wasted no time prying it open and coming in contact with the fresh air outside. The sky was getting a little darker and some lampposts were turned on as sunset drew near. He inhaled in relief as he jogged away from the place. 𝗵𝗿 exhaled with a smile, feeling his chest once where he was pushed. Geez, that kid doesn't realize how much brute strength he has. Natsuo kept walking until he found a bus stop and took the bus back to his apartment. 𝗵𝗿 took a seat back on the metal chair, but this time sitting properly with his back against the chair back. He idly rocked back and forth on it until a few villains came and called him out. Where's the hostage? Spinner cried out. 𝐴𝐻𝑁. 𝗵𝗿 feigned innocence. Oops, looked like he slipped out while I wasn't looking. What the heck? How's that even possible? What's your problem? You really have no intention of getting along. The ravnet abruptly stood up. You're right, I don't, he confirmed, eyes cold as ice as they stared down at the other villain. And if you pull that kinda shit again, I have no trouble deep frying small fish like you. He walked past them. What the hell is his problem? Man, he pisses me off. The next time 𝗵𝗿 visited Natsuo's lab wasn't for another few weeks. Per usual, Natsuo walked outside, locking the door to find the villain waiting for him outside. The silverette blinked as he registered the villain, who only smirked casually, saying, Hey, think you can lend a hand, doc? Natsuo automatically scowled. You're not welcome here. The teen frigidly walked past him, rudely brushing a shoulder as he did. Go find someone else. 𝗵𝗿 only stood there, not anticipating that response, and stared into space with slightly wide eyes. Why did that feel way colder than he expected? His body was adept to the cold, but his chest felt like it was freezing to stone right now. Well, what did he expect? It seems the last person that didn't loathe him now did. Why was he so good at pushing the most important people away from him? The ravnet clenched his jaw. Natsuo wanted to look back, but he resisted the urge. Was that too cold? What if he was really injured, badly? The teen shook his head. No, he wasn't someone so easy, who could be used whenever. He had pride too. That was the last time they met. A month passed by in the blink of an eye, uneventfully. Natsuo also had midterms coming up, so he was busy making study guides and catching up with assignments. Therefore, he didn't have much time to think about the ravnet either. That is, until there was another explosion near their college. He heard the League of Villains had been more active recently, and this just proved that point. The silverette was still in class, but an announcement and drill went off for all students and staff to evacuate the premises. The students immediately began to scatter, crossing the streets to a safer location, some going back to their dorms, while others called cabs. Natsuo also paced away, deciding to go back to his apartment. Loud sounds, yells, and more explosives erupted behind him as he marched away. He passed a destroyed alleyway, bricks and remnants of the wall of one of the buildings piled in a corner. The silverette was about to pass the mound without another glance, but he noticed what looked to be a person laying near the debris or under it. Natsuo halted in his steps, turning his body towards the blocks. I recruited a few more people that should buy me more time to look into Endeavor. 𝗵𝗿 thought as his eyes were glued to his old burner phone, scrolling through the contacts. He couldn't accomplish much right now because he was tasked with babysitting Shigaraki's precious Namu as it demolished the city. So fun. Yo, heads up. He heard one of his villain mates call out, a moment too soon before he saw a massive monster tail block his vision and strike him in middle. Before he had time to react, he was thrown across the sky, back crashing against a building, smashing the old building and landing on the ground with blocks and debris raining all over him. The ravnet ignored the pain in his spine and the feeling of his bones jittering as he tried to roll over, but not soon enough for his knee and leg to get caught under a metal weight. Not long after, the rest of the building also fell on his chest and body, but not entirely crushing his ribs since the metallic piece on his leg kept them lifted from his chest, but that didn't stop them from pressing on him. 𝐹𝐴. 𝗵𝗿 groaned in thought. What luck, that's it. That's the last time he was babysitting that abomination. He shifted once, and with the position he was laying in, it was difficult to just wiggle his leg out. The metal was too heavy. If anything, he would have to sit up and lift it up. However, the boulders on his chest weren't helping with that as he lay flat on his back. What the 𝐹𝐴𝐶K is this life? He was working endlessly, yet he didn't feel any closer to getting revenge on 𝗫𝗏. He felt too lazy to move but knew he'd had to eventually. The teen sighed, looking up at the clear sky, tuning out the commotion in the city and the faint smoke he saw. He titled his head backward to view the streets, appearing upside down in his vision. 𝗫𝗏 felt the vibrations of footsteps, and eventually saw a pair of legs at the end of the alleyway street. The 𝗫𝗏 followed up to see 𝗪𝐴 starting down at him with bewilderment. The last time he saw the younger was when he coldly brushed him off. His heart clenched at the memory, but he feigned innocence. Long time no see. 𝗫𝗏 wasn't expecting the younger to help him, but that didn't stop him from acting carefree and nonchalant. 𝗪𝐴 only stared at him like a madman, with a gaze wondering why he was just laying there until he noticed the pile of rocks on him. He frowned when thought he saw a glimpse of heavier metal somewhere underneath the rocks pinning his leg. "What the? Are you just gonna lay there?" The words were out of his mouth before he knew it. "So, you're talking to me now?" The teen frowned. 𝗫𝗏 felt a tad satisfied seeing that expression on him. He smiled and continued to answer. "It's pretty peaceful here, not going to lie. I got bored of babysitting that dumb shit anyway. Help him. You know you want to." A voice randomly spoke in his head, and the teen was about to whip his head around to find the source until he recognized it as 𝗬𝗪. That was a normal occurrence for him. He would hear 𝗬𝗪's voice here and there to help him with difficult decisions. More so in the past compared to now, but it wasn't all that foreign. 𝗫𝗏 sighed, troubled. Why was he so chill even at times like this? Wasn't he in pain? Was his leg broken? A million questions ran through his head as he automatically crouched over and attempted to lift the rocks. He tossed the huge boulder aside and 𝗫𝗏 grunted in pain, clenching his teeth when 𝗪𝐴 reached for the metal railing on his leg. The younger managed to push it aside to reveal blood pooling near the teen's leg. 𝗪𝐴 instinctively felt along the entire length to see if anything was broken, and 𝗫𝗏's face contorted in pain. The villain wanted to make a snarky comment so badly but stifled the urge. Also, since the pain was keeping his mouth shut for the most part, 𝗪𝐴 could tell how much pain the other was in and was fighting to show it. He felt conflicted. He couldn't just leave him there, but he was a villain. The villain didn't deserve to be helped ... But then again, he didn't personally ever see 𝗫𝗏 carry out acts of villainy, and he did help him escape that time. Just do it already. 𝗬𝗪's voice rang in his ears again, more insistently this time. That's when 𝗪𝐴 gave in and pulled 𝗫𝗏 up in a sitting position. He zipped off his hoodie and threw it on the elder, putting it on him including the hood, and hoisted him up by a hand on his waist. The 𝗫𝗏 glanced towards the younger once. His black half-sleeved t-shirt wasn't tight, but by the nature of his frame, he filled into it, outlining his figure nicely. 𝗪𝐴 was just blessed to have a naturally muscular build. 𝗪𝐴 walked them back to his apartment since it was close by. He tossed the limping villain onto his bed, who lay there, instantly appreciating the softness of the mattress. It was way better than his springy old uneven mattress. While the elder savored the feeling against his back, 𝗪𝐴 marched in and out of the room with medical supplies and tissues. It wasn't the same as being in the lab, but most recently he bought a special detailed first aid kit to help him practice for his labs. The 𝗫𝗏 came around and rolled up his pants to work on his leg. 𝗪𝐴 spread a sheet under his leg to avoid blood staining his bedsheets. During so, 𝗫𝗏 made the effort to pull off the hoodie and his trench coat, leaving only his loose white t-shirt. Afterwards, he lay straight back down, letting 𝗪𝐴 do all the work while he closed his eyes. "Okay, that should do it, but you still shouldn't put pressure on it. You're lucky nothing's overtly broken, but without an x-ray I can't tell if anything's fractured ... It's also really swollen." 𝗪𝐴 stood up, but eyes continued to look down on his leg. When the 𝗫𝗏 finally looked up towards him, not hearing any response, he found the other fast asleep. 𝗪𝐴's shoulders slumped in disbelief. "Seriously? He has no concern in the world. After putting me through so much stress." He shook his head. 𝗫𝗏 looked so exhausted, so frail, as he slept there soundly, listening to his gut. The teen pulled the sheets over his sleeping guest. What was he doing? 𝗪𝐴 combed his fingers through his own hair. More like, what was 𝗫𝗏 doing to him? The 𝗫𝗏 cleaned up after him and resorted to the living room. He sat down on the floor at the low table to open up his laptop and begin study. He couldn't afford to waste any more time, and since they ended class early, he should take advantage of that. 𝗫𝗏 woke up to a warm feeling. For once he felt well rested and his back wasn't sore. Well, a little, but he assumed that was most likely from being out in the field. He looked up to an unfamiliar ceiling, neat and clean, until a jolt of pain shot up his leg. 𝐹𝐴𝐶K, that hurt. He decided it was better not to move that leg just yet, but it all hit him. It's 𝗪𝐴's apartment, his bedroom. 𝗫𝗏 studied the small space. It was simple but neat. just like him. Speaking of which, where was the said other? Natsuo scratched his head while he tried to solve the math problem in front of him. He tapped his pen a couple times, the frustration rising, but continued to stare holes into the paper. That's when he saw something move in the corner of his eye and rotated his head towards the door, discovering 𝗵𝗿 leaning against the frame. "You look busy. Hope I'm not disturbing." Too late for that. But Natsuo wanted a distraction and dropped the pen, leaning back against the couch legs. "But what are you doing up? You shouldn't put pressure on that leg for a while. Can't really afford not to." The villain stepped into the room and let out a sharp hiss when he did so. At that, the silverette urgently stood up and rushed over to him. "Just relax. Do you not care about your own body?" Natsuo took his arm and helped him to the couch. 𝗵𝗿 internally chuckled at his gentlemanly gestures. "Now sit still." "Yes, boss. You want something to eat or drink?" the younger asked after a moment of dead silence. "No, it's fine," the 𝗫𝗏 flatly said, without the usual joking tone. In fact, he looked quite serious, staring somewhere on the ground while the other just stood there. Natsuo was viewing him from an above angle, and 𝗵𝗿's shoulders looked so much narrower than usual, especially with only a single layer of shirt on. Even if he was muscular, he was quite lean and lanky. "I made some extra sandwiches. I'll just bring them." Natsuo tore his gaze away. 𝗵𝗿 was injured all the time, and Natsuo didn't feel right that he didn't eat anything. The villain watched him scurry away, not approving or disapproving. The younger returned with a fish sandwich, since 𝗵𝗿 could use the protein, and warm coffee with milk. He set it on the table and sat on the floor again under him. "Thanks," the 𝗫𝗏 murmured as he took a small bite. It wasn't bad. But then again, any food would taste good right about now. He didn't notice until later that Natsuo was staring at him with expectant, starry eyes. It's good," 𝗵𝗿 felt compelled to say, and Natsuo realized that he had been watching him, a blush creeping on his cheeks, also feeling a tad flattered at the feedback. It's nothing. I learned from my sister. MHHM. 𝗵𝗿 continued to eat, and the silverette turned back to his homework. The atmosphere was quiet but comfortable. After 𝗵𝗿 finished his lunch, he attempted to stand up to return the dishes in the kitchen, but Natsuo noticed that and took them from him, getting up immediately. "It's fine. I'll take them. You're gonna make my leg even weaker," 𝗵𝗿 complained but smirked. "I feel like the more I rest it, the more it doesn't want to move." "That's the point." The younger took the plates back and quickly washed them. "I better be leaving." The 𝗫𝗏 eyed the clock. It was 10 p.m. He apparently slept through most of the afternoon, it seemed, and Shiggy was probably gonna lose it. Or not, depending on how badly he needed him. Which reminded him, where was his phone? 𝗵𝗿 assumed it was in Natsuo's room in his trench coat. "I don't know if I can trust you to take care of yourself. I think it'd be better if you stay the night here at least. I already know you're not going to take care of your leg when you get out of here. HMPH, you're gonna have someone you can't trust to stay with you. You're pretty naive." "Well, I wasn't expecting to be backstabbed by that someone. At least I don't have a knack for that." 𝗵𝗿's face tightened but reiterated, "When did I backstab you?" Natsuo opened his mouth to rant that he didn't stop the other villains, but closed it again. "Whatever, just stay the night. Can you get me my phone?" It sounded more like a statement than a request. "Huh, okay. Where?" "In my coat pocket." The silverette went to retrieve it. Once he did, 𝗵𝗿 checked his notification. No new messages. Looks like the league didn't need him. He could be dead and they would care less. The elder tossed the phone on the table. "Sure, looks like we're having a sleepover then." Natsuo didn't show a change in expression, but he felt his spirits rise in triumph. "You want a change of clothes?" "No, I'm good." 𝗵𝗿 knew he shouldn't get too comfortable. "Wow, for someone so brash and outspoken, you're sure holding back a lot." Natsuo teased. "Someone's getting cocky. Those are dirty. I'll get you something from my closet." In the end, as usual, 𝗵𝗿 just obliged his younger brother. He didn't want to argue with him anyways. If his brother wanted to give him clothes, then so be it. "You won't be able to hop in the shower, but you want to at least wipe yourself down or clean your hair?" the silverette inquired when he came back with one of his t-shirts and pajamas. Too much work for that. Just get me a washcloth and I'll wring my hair or something. Just want the debris out." Natsuo nodded, helping him to the bathroom and showing him around. He also left the clothes in there for him. The teen waited outside until 𝗵𝗿 walked out, changed, wearing his half-sleeved shirt that was unpredictably extra loose on him to the point where the sleeves were ending near his elbows. The villain let out, tugging on the waistband of the pajamas. "You have something with drawstrings. These ain't holding up," he pointed out, pulling on the band to show him the difference in circumference from his waist and the pajamas. "Oh, my bad. I didn't realize. Wait 1 second. Natsuo rushed back in his bedroom to roam through his drawers. He didn't know why his stomach was doing so many flips after he took in the image of the villain wearing his clothes. The loose clothes just made him appear even thinner. His wet spiky hair were also falling on his neck, and his skin looked paler than ever against his dark t-shirt. "Here, try these." 𝐻𝐻𝐻 handed one with drawstrings. Since they were both guys, the 𝗏𝗟 casually pulled down the loose ones, revealing his boxers, and climbed into the new sweatpants. That was the first time 𝐻𝐻𝐻 fully saw his legs and noticed there were burns on them as well. One leg had burns, all the way from his upper thighs to his ankle, while the other was from his calf to his foot. "This'll do," 𝗵𝗃 said. "So where am I sleeping? Are you sleepy?" The younger mouthed, completely astonished. "Since the other only woke up an hour or two ago." "Duh, obviously not. Just asking. You can sleep on the bed. I'll take the couch since your leg is still healing," 𝐻𝐻𝐻 said out of courtesy. "You really underestimate me, huh? Hey, just take advantage of someone taking care of you. It's not gonna happen again." The 𝗂𝒏𝒄 huffed. 𝗵𝗃 was silent initially. He had a point. Maybe he should let the teen pamper him for the night. How long had he been surviving on his own in the worst conditions imaginable? Man, he'd been relying on 𝐻𝐻𝐻 so much. "Fine," the villain surrendered. "With one condition." "chen." 𝐻𝐻𝐻 raised a brow. "Join me." Personally, he also wanted to sleep with 𝐻𝐻𝐻 just once, for old time's sake. "Huh?" The teen gawked. "We're both guys, doesn't matter." What? "I don't think that's possible. I only have a single bed." "Ah, that's right." However, 𝗵𝗃 couldn't go back on his word now. It was a matter of pride now. "We'll figure it out." The younger could only gulp at that. 𝐻𝐻𝐻 let the TV run with nothing better to do, while 𝗵𝗃 sat on the couch enjoying popcorn on his own. Now and then 𝐻𝐻𝐻 would be tempted and reach for a kennel or two while they watched a random show play out that neither of them really cared about. Though it wasn't long before 𝐻𝐻𝐻 began to feel sleepy. He had been up early for his lab, and tomorrow would be another long day. He stood up and stretched once, the time now being midnight. "I'm going to sleep," 𝐻𝐻𝐻 announced. "I have classes tomorrow." The usual huh. "Go for it, Doc." The 𝗂𝒏𝒄 never got tired of that nickname for some reason. "Don't do anything stupid to your leg while I'm not looking," the teen pointed out with a finger. 𝗵𝗃 only laughed in response. The younger brushed his teeth and resorted to his room, falling on the bed, pondering once again just how natural they felt with each other. It's like they just clicked. He yawned once more. Whatever, he decided to stop questioning it. He just knew he didn't hate spending time with the other at all. In fact, 𝗵𝗃 was kind of unique, mysterious, interesting. For a villain, he felt intrigued and even attracted to him to a certain extent. It didn't make any sense to him either. He simply felt the other understood him even if they lived different lives. 𝐻𝐻𝐻 cracked his eyes open. His subconscious told him it was too early, but he still woke up, feeling a bit more cramped than usual. When he opened his eyes, he saw nothing but black spiky hair. "Huh? Oh, 𝗵𝗃." He peered down at the figure who was pretty much glued to him, one of his leg over the younger's leg as his arms wrapped his chest, soundly asleep. He was a bit too comfortable. It was also 𝗵𝗃's actions like these that confused and swayed him even further. 𝐻𝐻𝐻 found it slightly troubling but didn't mind. He also noticed the blanket falling off 𝗵𝗃's pale shoulder as the neck of the t-shirt exposed it further. Both of them were sleeping sideways, 𝗵𝗃 being slightly lower. And from that angle, when 𝐻𝐻𝐻 looked down at his shoulders, he also unintentionally caught sight of the other's peck and nipple. The 𝗂𝒏𝒄 bit his lip and averted his gaze right away, pulling the sheets over the elder. He ended up just leaving his arm over him. Even though they were guys, 𝐻𝐻𝐻 still felt guilty. He eyed the clock. He was right. It was still too early for his alarm to go off, so he drifted back to sleep with his arm resting over the other. The 𝗂𝒏𝒄 woke up again, but this time to his raging alarm. The teen felt sleep-deprived but inevitably struggled up, reaching for his phone. 𝗊𝒃, turn that shit off. A voice grunted beside him, reminding him of the other sleeping fellow in his bed. 𝐻𝐻𝐻 looked over to see 𝗵𝗃 burying himself in the covers and palming his ears with his hands, eyes still closed but a scowl apparent on his face. The 𝗂𝒏𝒄 let out an unfiltered chuckle as he finally shut the alarm off, also climbing out of bed and leaving the warmth of his body temperature on the mattress. After he trudged to the bathroom, 𝗵𝗃 instantly noticed how empty and spacious the small bed felt, even if there was more room for him to lay properly now. Something about getting used to sleeping cramped with another person. The 𝗏𝗟 rolled over to lay on his back, utilizing the extra space for now. Coming out of the bathroom and changing clothes, the teen went straight to the kitchen to make some breakfast. He was starving. Doing so, 𝗵𝗃 could smell the fresh scent of coffee all the way to the bedroom as he continued to lazily snuggle in bed. This wasn't so bad. It was so comfy. Since his kitchen was so small, he didn't have a table or anything. So most of the time the 𝗂𝒏𝒄 just brought the food to the low living room table and ate with the TV, if he wasn't in a rush. 𝗵𝐻𝐻 brought the plate of fried eggs and coffee to the living room for himself. Before sitting down, he paused and thought for a moment. Should he call 𝗵𝗃 out to eat with him? It's not like he had school or anything. he could just come out whenever and grab something to eat. However, being the self-righteous, overly sensitive person 𝗀𝐻𝐻 was, he felt guilty making an injured person and guest, no less, do all that. In conclusion, he went back to the kitchen and fixed a quick egg and cheese sandwich for the other as well. After setting the second plate and coffee on the table, he receded to the bedroom and tapped on the door to catch the other's attention. "Hey, MH, the villain cracked an eye open his way. "Morning," he slurred. Yeah, 𝗀𝐻𝐻 forgot about the morning greetings. I made breakfast. I'll look at you." Of course, 𝗬𝗿 bullied him first thing in the morning. "You'd make the perfect husband. Or wife, huh?" 𝗀𝐻𝐻 only scowled at him, not appreciating the teasing as he fought back another blush. "Ugh, first thing in the morning and you can't take anything seriously." "My bad. Force of habit. It's just my default setting." "I can see that. I'll be right there." 𝗀𝐻𝐻 blinked once at that, in mild shock. So, he actually wanted to join him for breakfast. Okay. The teen returned to the living room and sat in front of his food, waiting for the other to show up. He could afford to wait a little bit, since he still had time and walked to his college, so he didn't have to worry about transportation delays. Luckily, 𝗬𝗿 didn't take long as he showed up at the living room door. "How's your leg?" the 𝐲𝗏𝗟 asked when he saw the elder walking more normally and not hissing out in pain with every step. "Do you need help?" he posed when 𝗬𝗿 also made an effort to join him on the floor so he wasn't too high. "No, I'm good. It's way better than before. I'll get used to walking around in no time." "If you say so." The teen began eating right away. He would have to rush out if he didn't finish soon. He quickly chugged his coffee because, let's be real, that was the true fuel to keep him ignited the whole day, and dropped his plates in the kitchen on the way out. "Okay, I gotta run out. You're welcome to stay, but no funny business, and don't touch anything," he emphasized with a serious face before darting out. 𝗬𝗿 watched him run out and the apartment door shut close, exuding a laugh when he was alone. "Leaving a stranger alone in your apartment. Bad 𝗀𝐻𝐻-kun," he voiced out loud, but sipped his coffee as he rested his chin on his palm. It was a simple breakfast and very generic instant coffee, but it was the best he'd ever tasted. Maybe because it was the first time he ate with someone that actually mattered. He wished he could do this more often, but that'd just be wishful thinking on his part. That afternoon, 𝗬𝗿 stretched his muscles and flexed his legs some more, getting himself accustomed to walking like a normal person without limping. Like he said, he got used to it all quick, and he was majorly lucky that nothing was broken. Or at least, didn't feel broken. The villain had to step out for a bit, so he grabbed the spare keys to the apartment and returned to his own rundown apartment. He debated on just leaving 𝗀𝐻𝐻's apartment, but had a strong hunch that the teen would be dejected if he merely ditched without a word. Hence, he took the keys so he could come back. Back at his apartment, 𝗬𝗿 used the free time to look over files and other hero trash he collected for any leads or any weak points. After a few hours, he also stopped by the League of Villains lair to see what was up and to remind them he was still alive. Apparently Shiggy didn't need him at the moment. Well, he wasn't complaining. On the way back to 𝗀𝐻𝐻's place, he picked up some food for both himself and the teen. The villain saw how hard the 𝐲𝗏𝗟 worked, so thought he deserved it. Plus, it was the least he could do to repay the younger's big heart. And afterwards, he may have secretly made a personal copy of the spare keys. As HHH, he didn't know why either. He simply indulged his compulsion. Once at 𝗀𝐻𝐻's apartment, he sat around on the couch, resting his leg. He had done quite a bit of walking the whole day. He eyed the clock and realized he had no knowledge of when the teen was coming back. With nothing better to kill time with, 𝗬𝗿's eyes caught sight of the teen's game collection. 𝗀𝐻𝐻 unlocked the main door and entered home around 6 p.m. He walked in, kicked off his shoes, and automatically saw 𝗬𝗿 checking out his game CDs when he made it to the living room. Aside from the fact that he was impressed the villain didn't disappear on him, he also noticed 𝗬𝗿 touching his stuff and yelled out, "Hey, I thought I said no touching." "Oops, my bad." With that, the Ravenet simply dropped it from his hands onto the floor. "Kaya, don't just drop it." The 𝐲𝗏𝗟's heart panicked as he ran over to it, throwing his bag on the couch. He readjusted his CDs on the small shelf under the TV. "Anyways, I'm glad I didn't have lab today and ended early. MHHM. By the way, I smelled something good when I walked in. I brought some noodles." "Really?" 𝗀𝐻𝐻 chirped at that. "Oh, thanks, you didn't really have to." "Well, you also didn't have anything left in the fridge." That statement from 𝗬𝗿 felt like a boulder hitting him on the head. "Oh, did you eat?" "Yeah," 𝗬𝗿 answered with a tone of "I didn't know when you were coming back." "Oh, okay." 𝗀𝐻𝐻 felt a tad bummed out at that. "Then don't mind if I dig in." Regardlessly, he waltzed to the kitchen to fetch the food. "Knock yourself out," the elder said, just in time for 𝗀𝐻𝐻 to return to the room with the noodle bowl in his hands. He sat on the floor crossed-legged and began slurping away. Unbeknownst to him, 𝗬𝗿 watched him eat with a subtle grin on his face while it was supported by his knuckles. He was such a big man but still resembled a child here and there. It felt nostalgic. "Wow, these were so good. Thanks, don't mention it," the villain hummed. It took 𝗀𝐻𝐻 a long minute to finally pick up on the difference in the villain. you changed your clothes. Yeah, I went back home for a bit, he told. Speaking of which, I think I've overstayed my welcome. Oh yeah. In truth, Natsuo didn't mind the company. It wasn't every day he had guests over, more like rarely any day. Maybe they should have a game night one day or something, like on a weekend. The suggestion automatically came to his mind, but he didn't voice it just yet. But before I do, I also went all the way home to retrieve this. 𝗵𝗲 took a piece of paper out from his pocket and handed it to the silverette. A phone number. Natsuo stared at it taken aback. Yeah, mine, 'cause I keep forgetting it. Huh, but you have your phone on you though. That model is too old, so I can't even view my own number, plus I change it pretty often. 𝗃 shrugged. Okay, thanks. Natsuo took out his own phone to add it. But why? As if his elder brother had a solid answer to that. Just text me if you're ever in a pinch. That was easier said than done though. Think of it as returning the favor, the elder muttered, the base of his palm moving closer to muffling his mouth now. This conversation would have been so much easier if they knew they were brothers, he thought. Something about being strangers and maintaining a certain level of formality, distance that made it even more awkward. But the genuine appreciative smile from Natsuo vanquished his doubts. 𝗵𝗲 couldn't tear his eyes away as warm dark eyes beamed at him. The silverette then wordless turned back to inputting the number in his contacts list. Maybe he was wrong about the villain after all. Warmth and admiration spread in his chest. Now what name do I save this under? And that's when a revelation hit him like a ton of heavy bricks. He very abruptly rotated his head towards the villain who nearly jumped. What? 𝗵𝗲 phrased, startled, face coming off his palm. I haven't even told you my name yet. Oh, that. The 𝗃 averted his eyes. I just realized right now because if you want to save my number then you won't have anything to save it under. It's Natsuo, the silverette introduced. Natsuo T. Todoroki. 𝗵𝗲 finished for him. Yeah, how did you? Endeavor's son. The number 2 hero. I'm pretty sure the whole city knows who you and your siblings are. Oh, I guess. Natsuo turned his gaze to the floor, even though Shoto was more prevalent in the media. He figured a simple search would uncover his and Fayumi's existence as well if anyone tried. But okay, Natsu-kun. 𝗵𝗲 intentionally tested the name on his tongue. It felt so refreshing and nostalgic to finally say it out loud to the person himself. The silverette froze at the nickname, turning in the other's direction. Taoya used to call him that. What were the odds? Natsuo hadn't even registered when he inched closer to the villain and gripped his upper arm like he was subconsciously afraid the other might escape or disappear or something. What? The 𝗃 feigned innocence. He was cruel, he already knew that. Perhaps a part of him wanted to be seen already, be discovered under this mask he created, at least by one person, to see the real him, or who he used to be. But at the same time, he couldn't bestow that burden on Natsuo. The only other person to figure it out would be Shoto, but that kid was too busy seeing him as a villain and brainwashed by the hero society to think for himself. Oh, sorry. The younger released his grasp immediately and faced back around, head hanging low. Seeing his sullen demeanor, 𝗵𝗲 was beginning to feel a little guilty for playing these mind games on him. You okay? Was it something I said? Why was he still trying? Natsuo didn't respond for a good while, and the tension only seemed to be getting heavier in the air until he finally spoke. No. It just reminded me of something. Or someone, I guess. I see. 𝗵𝗲 didn't probe further. He really didn't need to do this to Natsu-kun. The villain sighed, guilty as charged, and awkwardly but hesitantly raised his hand, patting the other's head once. Natsuo's eyes widened a small fraction, not anticipating the gesture at all. That evoked a chuckle from the silverette. What's up with that? The younger questioned, mirth returning to his features. Now you're laughing. The 𝗃 retreated his hand, feeling somewhat bashful. You just looked like you needed it. Haha, no, it's okay, but thanks. 𝗵𝗲 was grateful to see a smile back on those lips. It's been years now. I should really get over it. The elder swallowed thickly. Don't. The thought automatically rang in his head. But he ultimately shook his head. He should seriously make up his mind. He couldn't keep sending mixed signals to the younger. It's like he wanted to keep his identity secret but at the same time desired to continue interacting with Natsuo. I'm out now, the villain declared, standing up. Okay. Natsuo stood up as well, seeing him to the door. Thanks again for this. He waved his phone once. 𝗵𝗲 scoffed. No need to thank me for that. But hopefully as long as you guys stay out of this part of town, I won't need it. Natsuo insisted. 𝗵𝗲 pulled up his hood. I don't call all the shots around here. And with that he left. The younger watched for a bit longer before coming in and closing the door. He ended up saving the villain's number under Taoya. He couldn't just save it under the villain's actual name in case anyone ever wanted to go through his phone. So the next name that struck his mind was Taoya, since the other did incessantly remind him of him. He was down bad. The next day, 𝗵𝗲 was chilling on the couch in his apartment. It was close to 7 p.m. and he was bored. He probably got too used to spending time with the younger. Speaking of which, he wondered what Natsu was up to at this time. most likely making notes or study guides. Damn, being a med student was tough. 𝗫𝐵 resorted to flipping through the few channels he had on his TV and found nothing. With no luck, the 𝗏𝗟 tossed the remote aside and dragged himself up, resolving to look over his maps of the city instead. His plan was to somehow isolate 𝗫𝗏 and have his revenge. 𝗫𝐵 circled some points on his notes until his phone buzzed unexpectedly. He debated on checking it, wondering if he should soil his mood, especially if it's from the league, giving in to his ennui. The elder uncovered the phone and saw a text notification from an unknown number. His eyes bulged at the text. "Hey, I realized you don't HV my number, so just wanted to send a MSG." 𝗫𝐻, the villain's heart jumped a beat once, staring at the text, before he let out an exasperated sigh. "Damn it, 𝗫𝐻, why are you so cute?" The 𝗏𝗟 couldn't resist laughing maniacally to himself right after. The villain then texted back without another thought. "Yo, you miss me already." 𝗫𝐵 sneered as he wrote out the text, projecting his own feelings onto the other. What the? As if I was just sitting around and realized that. Or not doing anything. No, not really. Not studying for once. I'm caught up, for now at least. Needed a break. I see there was a pause for a moment. 𝗫𝐵 didn't have any more to say, so waited for the other to text next, who also seemed to have reached a plateau. The villain put down the phone, thinking he was better off focusing on what he was doing instead. What was he expecting from 𝗫𝐻 anyways? It's not like they could friends all of a sudden. Furthermore, 𝗫𝐻 would loathe him once he discovered that he was being lied to the entire time. The 𝗏𝗟 clenched his jaw, his chest feeling exceptionally heavy. He didn't like the sound of that. The feeling resembled the time when 𝗫𝐻 ignored him. 𝗫𝐻 was a very genuine and kind-hearted person, but he also had their father's temper. Hardly a minute passed when the villain's phone vibrated again, and he didn't wait a second longer to pick it up. "You wanna meet up?" 𝗫𝐵 blinked twice at the text, dumbfounded. What? He wanted to willingly meet up. Did he forget who he was? Sorry, is it weird? You must be busy. 𝗫𝐵 responded with a, "No, it's not that." 𝗫𝐵 could lie, say he had villain stuff, that he was out, or anything really. However, before he could respond or explain, a call interrupted the conversation and appeared on screen. He clicked his tongue as he answered. It was Toga. "What? Yo, we're patrolling the area. Me, you, and don't say twice." 𝗫𝐵 groaned, cutting her off. "Twice? Tisk, 𝐹𝑥𝐷. Be careful what you wish for." 𝗫𝐵 the girl cooed, and he rolled his eyes. "Shut up. You two go do it. It'll be more than enough." "Yeah, except Shiggy said you have to, no matter what. You know the area pretty well. Plus, he says you've been slacking off." She whispered the last part, as if their boss was close by. "I bet he did. Not my fault I get bored of spoon-feeding his mindless pets." Toga cackled at that. "Ha ha ha. He called your gnomus pets, Shiggy," she said, clearly not to 𝗫𝐵. The 𝗏𝗟 exuded an annoyed sigh. "Whatever, send me the coordinates." He hung up. When the screen finally returned to the text messages, 𝗫𝐵 noticed a new one from 𝗫𝐻. So, 𝗫𝐵 had no choice but to text back and deny the offer. So much for their little play day. "I can't, something came up. You know, villain stuff. Okay, never mind, but don't kill anyone." 𝗫𝐵 scoffed at the faces the younger sent him. "Hey, no promises, what? Bad, I'm joking. I have no interest in unnecessary bloodshed, but if you get in my way, you asked for it, 𝐺𝐸, then why are you a villain?" The 𝗏𝗟 pondered on a suitable answer to that. Something short but satisfying and not very heartfelt or revealing. "Let's just say I HV an agenda I need to get to, and this is the only route there, What could that be?" 𝗫𝐻 was already aware he wouldn't receive a definitive answer. Nevertheless, 𝗫𝐵 left the conversation there, standing up and pulling on his trench coat. A good week and a half went by without any messages, and 𝗫𝐵 wasn't complaining. Then why was he here in disguise with his black hoodie, mask, and this time black sunglasses on his face? The villain was sitting in the cafe across the street from 𝗫𝐻's college. Yeah, he wondered the same. He had been quote-unquote stalking the teen for a week now. This helped him keep track of when and where 𝗫𝐻's classes started and ended. He also found out so much of what the other did with his free time. The places he visited, or the people he met, if he ever did. He basically knew 𝗫𝐻's day-to-day schedule like the back of his hand now. Mondays and Tuesdays were long days. Wednesdays were shorter with no labs, and Thursdays and Fridays were in between. 𝗫𝐻 came out to the cafe quite regularly for lunch or a quick coffee in the morning if he was running late. He didn't need to know his routine, but he wanted to. It was unsettling for him if he didn't have all the information on the younger. Call him controlling, maybe, but he couldn't help himself, especially when it pertained to someone on his radar. He already had a lot of information on 𝗉𝗏. But then again, that was also more for hero activity purposes. At the moment, the younger was still in class and wouldn't be out for another 2 hours. Bored, the villain stood up and walked to the teen's apartment uninvitingly. He used the duplicate keys to open the door and enter. Right off the bat, he was struck with the faint aroma of coffee and soft vanilla mixed with Natsuo's calm musky scent. The blend was so comforting and stimulating at the same time that he was beginning to get attached to it. It soothed his inner being. 𝗵𝗡 laid down on the couch, face first, noticing the mess of textbooks on his table. Everything else in the apartment looked exactly the same as the last time he was here. The villain lounged for an hour, making calls to other villains while he was there. Eventually, the 𝗏𝗏 decided to leave the place untouched. Even if he had an extra hour, there was no telling when Natsuo could pop up. He breathed in the scent one last time before officially leaving. The villain reached for the handle until he heard rattling of keys and his heart dropped. As the handle turned, the door automatically opened and 𝗵𝗡 had no choice but to squeeze himself behind the door. Natsuo walked in cluelessly, stepping all the way forward in the foyer, reaching for his shoelaces. The 𝗏𝗏 gulped, and before the door could fully close, he slipped out from behind, catching the door once to stall it from closing fully as he whisked out the door in one quick motion. Natsuo's back was still facing him, and soon the door closed with a soft thud. The teen glanced back once, feeling something off as the door closed with a delay, but upon seeing nothing he simply brushed it off. He was tired anyways and needed some food desperately. Natsuo was taking a break from studying for a quiz and hopped onto his gaming console for a quick game. He played on his own for a bit, pondering how fun it would have been to challenge someone. As if on cue, 𝗵𝗡's face flashed in his mind once. That's when he also realized that he hadn't texted the other in about 2 weeks now. Man, time really flies by when you have college day in and out. And it was his second year, so things were getting more hectic. Should he reach out? Natsuo contemplated. The villain never texted him first. So how did he know he wasn't being a bother? Maybe he shouldn't after all. Whatever. The 𝗏𝗏 continued playing his games without a second thought. Before he knew it, an hour had passed by and his phone vibrated while he was in the middle of a level. As soon as the level was complete, he reached for his phone and checked the notifications. There were a few texts from 𝗵𝗡. The teen impulsively dropped the controller and clicked on the messages. 𝐶30 Street App 2 Fahrenheit T. Needer expertise doc T. Now if possible. T. The 𝗏𝗏 immediately stood up as he viewed the image of a bloodied waist and hip. What the hell did he get himself into this time? He thought frantically, as he ran to his special first aid kit and went to fetch a coat with a hood on top. They were slowly entering December and the weather was beginning to get colder fast. Natsuo grabbed a cab to the part of town where 𝗵𝗡 addressed. Where the hell is this place? I can barely see the street signs. The streets were run down and dead. Furthermore, the signs were scratched, old, and the ones that were visible appeared vandalized. The streets looked haunted even in the middle of the day, on a Sunday. The teen finally made it to the apartment complex, having to double-check and ask for directions on the way there once. The building numbers were very faint, so he wanted to make sure he was headed the right way. It was a low 2-story apartment complex, and Natsuo just automatically began walking up the stairs because with the front door caved in on the first floor, he was sure no one occupied that floor. Cautiously knocking the door, he waited a good minute before it creaked open, revealing 𝗵𝗡 leaning against it, half naked. Natsuo's eyes involuntarily trailed down to his midsection and then at the blood and cuts near his hip. Before he shot back up. He'd get injured too often. Is it so hard to stay out of the way? Natsu scolded with a troubled frown on his face. The villain only let out a weak laugh at that. Can't help it, now can I. Just my work. He let them in, limping to the main room. Work, he says. Natsuo followed, closing the door behind him. You can at least choose to be careful. Yeah, ... but then I have you for that. 𝗵𝗡 managed a smirk. Anyways, I didn't call you here for the nagging. The 𝗏𝗏 felt like he was talking to a wall. Nothing was getting through the villain, and it looked like he wasn't going to be compliant with anything he said. You're just going to have to deal with that. Natsuo sulked as he set his first aid kit down and the villain laid down on the floor, not willing to get his only couch stained with blood. The teen crouched beside him, meticulously cleaning and working on his wound. 𝗵𝗡 pulled his waistband down from his injured hip so Natsuo had full access to the area. Damn it ... it's going to need stitches. The 𝗏𝗏 mouthed out loud apprehensively. Do whatever. That's not the problem. The issue was that he was no expert in stitches. He had done them in lab once as practice and watched videos on them out of curiosity, but he had never performed them on actual flesh. Does it hurt? The teen curiously glanced up at him, after locally anesthetizing the area and piercing the other's skin with a needle. Just do your thing, doc. Don't worry about me. 𝗵𝗡 had an arm over his eyes. Gee, you really need to stop coming to me for this. The teen wanted to mask his nervousness with agitation, but it still showed in his tone of voice. I'm not a professional, he emphasized. Well, you're far better than me, the 𝗏𝗏 shrugged. Plus a wanted villain like me can't just walk up to a hospital and expect to get treated. Natsuo frowned at the reality of that while he went back to cleaning the wound. It took a while, but he somehow managed to stitch the laceration up that ran across the other's right hip. He still hadn't mastered tying the final knot, so he just double knotted the silicone strands and prayed they wouldn't reopen. The younger let out a huge breath he didn't even know he was holding. Done in all fairness, he didn't want to do this again, especially without any formal training. Natsuo sat back, relaxing his posture as he leaned against the couch. So much for using the number to call you, you just end up exploiting me. 𝗵𝗲 half chuckled. To avoid the pain he felt from laughing and held onto the bandaged area. Yeah, my bad. I guess I just need you more. 𝗃𝗏 felt his heart thump once at that confession, causing him to awkwardly rub his knee. Whatever, just don't make me do this again. Thanks a lot though. Natsuo nodded in acknowledgement as he helped the elder onto the couch to lay down. While the villain rested, he studied the space around him. The apartment had one room, the one they were in, a bathroom and a kitchen from the looks of it. The room had an old couch, a mattress with rumpled sheets against the corner, a TV and a small drawer stand which held a few books on top, along with a lamp and Natsuo assumed clothes in the few drawers underneath. Small, but cozy. So, this is your place. 𝗵𝗲 hummed. I'd offer you something to drink, but I think all I have is water, and maybe an energy drink in the fridge. If you want. No, that's okay. I'm fine. The teen didn't want to infringe. Should he leave, now that he served his purpose? Stay. The villain mouthed to his surprise, as if reading his mind. The villain still had an arm over his eyes, so it was hard to read his expression. Just stay a little longer. It's Sunday anyway. Natsuo averted his gaze for a moment before complying and taking a seat on the love seat at 𝗵𝗲's feet. The villain had to move his feet out of the way since the couch was barely big enough for the length of his entire body. Well, I was studying for a quiz tomorrow. He slowly added. Why was he saying that when he wanted to stay? At least wear a shirt, it's getting colder. Then can you get me one? It's on the mattress. Natsuo gave him a dreary look. What, am I your servant now? He pouted as he went to retrieve the article of clothing. He sure was comfortable ordering people around. The younger dumped the t-shirt on his face and the elder pulled it on. When Natsuo sat back on the couch, 𝗵𝗲 scooted closer to him, dropping his head on the other's lap. The younger sensed his stomach cave at that gesture. What? He froze. Be my pillow. Aren't you a little too comfortable? The villain emitted his usual carefree laugh. If only you knew. He lidded his eyelids, slowly drifting into sleep with peace. He felt serene in Natsuo's presence, and especially times when he cuddled against the big warm body. Now and in the past, it was nice to know some things hadn't changed. The 𝗃𝗏 leaned back, ultimately resting an elbow on the armrest and idly playing with the pointy strands of Elder's hair with his other hand as he slept soundly. He went to sleep fast, probably runs low on it most of the time. Though the teen wondered how much longer he'd have to sit there as a statue. What kind of hospitality is this? Falling asleep on your guest. He chuckled at the thought, fondly playing with the other's hair as he stared at the tired sleeping face. Natsuo was still sitting hostage in 𝗵𝗲's apartment, with the elder's head on his lap. How much longer would he have to sit here? I wish I brought my notes with me. I could have reviewed them one last time. He glanced at the time. It was 5 p.m. The days were shorter and it was probably starting to get dark out. He wasn't sure when the other would wake up, but he couldn't navigate these streets in the darks. Moreover, it was dangerous. The 𝗃𝗏 gently lifted the other's head off his lap and gathered him in his arms to carry him to the mattress, also realizing how light the elder was. Tucking the teen under the sheets, he stroked his hair one last time before he left the place. Outside, the sky was turning into warm shades of pink, orange, and purple. While he walked back, he texted 𝗵𝗲 telling him how he had to leave before it got too dark. 𝗀𝐺 had officially been declared the #1 hero after All Might had no choice but to step down. With it, Bakugo, Deku and Shoto joined his agency for their internship. They finished a day's worth of work and were in the locker rooms, changing into their school uniform. Bakugo stole a glimpse at the dual-haired, who was shirtless, his back and side profile visible to the blonde. Good teamwork, guys. Deku cheered, but Bakugo hardly even heard him. Shoto turned around and nodded, pulling his white school shirt on and buttoning it up. You've mastered controlling your strength very well. Aha, you think so? The green-haired teen bashfully scratched his cheek. I still have a long way to go, but at least I'm not bruising as bad as before. See? Deku raised his fist. Yeah, that's very impressive. Shoto had all eyes on Deku. Shut up. Impressive my ass, you're still a wimp. Bakugo smacked his childhood friend with his bag after he was done changing. Hurry the 𝐹𝐴 up already. The guys are slow as shit. The blonde was walking towards the door already. 𝐾𝐦. I'll wait, Bakugo. Shoto called out. I actually had something to ask of the two of you. Both of them curiously looked at the teen. My sister invited you all for dinner, the dual-haired teen informed. He was fine with the idea of a family dinner, even if Mayumi had invited Endeavor and Natsuo to take part in it as well. Though it would have been ideal if Mother or Taoya was with them. Why? Bakugo screamed. She wanted me to introduce my friends. Shoto answered calmly. Go tell her right now that we've never been friends. Bakugo exclaimed. 𝗀𝐽. Midoriya fretted. Sure, we'll come. Speak for yourself, nerd. 𝗀𝗏 then gave him a serious look. He wasn't going to break his sister's heart. In the end, 𝗫𝗏 drove them all home whether they wanted to or not. They entered the Todoroki residence and was greeted by Mayumi instantly, who thanked them all for coming. It also happened to be the weekend that Natsuo was visiting. At the dinner table, the family didn't speak much. 𝗀𝗏, not being the talkative type, left Deku and Baku feeling very awkward and tense. 𝗀𝗏 and Mayumi sat on one side, while Bakugo and Midoriya sat on the other side across from them. Natsuo and 𝗀𝐸 were seated on each far end of the table. Midoriya chose to awkwardly break the silence and praise the delicious food. Well, of course, ever since our housemaid left, Mayumi has been doing all the cooking. Natsuo added casually. Give yourself credit, Natsuo. We take turns, don't we? The sister patted his Silverette brother's back fondly. Hey, then I've eaten your cooking too. Apparently this was news for 𝗀𝗏, but either way he felt blessed. I wonder about that. I might have been forced to stop after my cooking failed to reach someone's standards. The Silverette bitterly spoke, gaze directed towards a certain pro-hero. Deku and Bakugo could feel the food getting further stuck in their throats as the thick air clamped them. Mayumi pinched Natsuo's thigh, changing the subject instead. But to make matters worse, halfway through the dinner, Natsuo abruptly stood up and excused himself. Well, I came like you asked. Can I go now? He said. Thanks for the food. Natsuo, I'm sorry Mayumi, but I still just can't. I can't pretend like everything is okay. I don't care if he wants to change now. It's too late for that. 𝗏𝗨 already paid the price and he could never bring him back, the elder teen painfully said as he took his dishes and left the room. The rest of the dinner was carried out in silence. Haha, sorry for making you all help out, Mayumi mouthed as they all lifted plates and utensils, clearing the table in the living room. It's fine, 𝗀𝗏 expressionlessly consoled, being the only one there in the room. The girl hesitated for a moment before speaking up. It's not like I don't feel the same as Natsu, but we have a chance now to make everything better. We can't hold on to the past forever. What do you think about father, 𝗀𝗏? The teen looked up at her, before dropping his eyes back to the ground to formulate his thoughts into a sentence. This scar, mother just endured and endured. She was eaten away from the inside out. I can't forgive him that easily. That said, mother is working hard to get over the past. To be honest, I'm not sure myself. He clenched his fists unknowingly. I don't know what I should think about him. I still can't see anything different yet. Keep that shit to yourselves when you have guests over. Bakugo busted into the room, not regretting his actions one bit. It just so happened Deku and him were outside the room, returning from the kitchen when they overheard their conversation. Sorry, Mayumi faltered. Meanwhile, Midoriya felt terrible for Bakugo's rude outburst. But Todoroki-kun, you're preparing yourself to forgive him, aren't you? The blunt question was out of the green-haired teen mouth before he even knew it. After listening to 𝗀𝗏 speak that time, he couldn't help but feel that sort of vibe from his monologue. The half-and-half teen stared at him. If you really hated him, I think it's fine if you never forgave him. But you're not like that. You're a kind person. That's why it looks like you're waiting. While Deku was going on, Bakugo spotted Natsu approach the room, with his bag, ready to leave but coming to say one last goodbye. However, the Silverette froze when he heard Deku's inference, a horrifying look washing over his features as he couldn't believe his ears. How could 𝗀𝗏 forgive him? So, he's waiting. Unbeknownst to all of them, 𝗫𝗏 was on the other side of the hall, holding the dessert as he overheard a bit of the conversation as well. He couldn't bring himself to enter and turned back around to the kitchen instead. Natsuo left the house first. The winter nights were getting colder, so he zipped up his jacket fully and stood outside, staring at his phone, breath turning into a cloud of fog. Next, 𝗫𝗏 drove the teens back to their dorms. The ride was going smooth until they spotted something up ahead. A villain, a tall deranged person in prisoner's clothing, stood with straps coming out his body. Those said straps wrapped another familiar being in the air, like a mummy. You've got a nice house, don't you, 𝗫𝗏? The villain screamed as 𝗫𝗏 recognized an apprehensive Natsuo wrapped in the villain's hold. Natsu, 𝗀𝗏 was the first to scream his name, as he peered towards the front seats. The driver swerved the car to safety and hardly had the chance to brake, when 𝗫𝗏 was already in his hero uniform and flying towards the villain in full flames. Release him, the hero demanded. Do you remember me, 𝗫𝗏? The villain cried. It took a second, but 𝗫𝗏 soon recalled him being a villain he had arrested 7 years ago. I admired you. I don't have anything left to protect. I'm going to kill this man. The villain shaped one of his tape straps as an arrow and pointed it towards Natsuo, who was still held in air, fully wrapped including his mouth. So, I'm begging you, 𝗫𝗏, kill me. While 𝗫𝗏 stood internally conflicted, the teens took this opportunity to get into gear as they pulled their hero uniforms on. Natsuo, 𝗀𝗏 cried out again as he charged forward behind Bakugo. The blonde's blast threw the villain off balance and 𝗀𝗏 came speeding forward, left side igniting in all seriousness as he called out to Natsuo one more time. Let him go. Todoroki sent a wave of flames his way. The villain managed to dodge that one. However, Bakugo caught him by surprise and blasted directly at him, flying in and grabbing hold of Natsuo. As soon as the coast was clear, 𝗁𝐵𝑟 leaped towards them, hugging both teens tightly while Midoriya and Shoto finished the villain off. "Are you hurt?" Denji inquired immediately. "As if." "Get off me," Bakugo growled. All Natsuo could weakly utter was, "So hot." 𝗁𝐵𝑟's heart was still pounding in his chest at the almost possibility of losing his second son. He planted a hand behind the Silverette's head, pulling him close. Meanwhile, Bakugo couldn't tolerate the sentiment any further and escaped the hero's grasp on his own. "Where'd that white line bastard go?" The blonde scowled. "He's been apprehended," Shoto calmly stated, holding him by the collar. "괊𝐴?" Natsuo finally struggled out of his father's grasp, pushing him away. "Natsuo," his father demanded. "I'm sorry. For a moment, I thought, if I saved you back there was a possibility that you might never say a word to me again." "What?" The Silverette gawked at him confused, sitting on the cold pavement of the street. "It wasn't my intention to shut any one of you out. I know I ran away from my responsibilities, away from Tauya, and of course away from the fact that I killed him. It doesn't matter if you were trying to shut us out." Natsuo wanted to mentally deny it, but it was evident to anyone that his voice was shaking. "So what? It won't change what you did. You can't ever take that back. Ever since that day, I've been hearing Tauya's voice in my head. Can you even imagine how I feel?" By this point, tears were clouding his vision and uncontrollably filling his eyes. "There will never come a time where I can forgive you. I'm not as kind as Shoto is." Shoto stared at the Silverette with concern but equal understanding. "Even so, you came out today for Fayumi's sake, right? You're also a kind person." And she sat a feet away from him on his knees. "It's all right if you never forgive me. I'm not asking for your forgiveness. I just want to make up for everything I've done. Stop saying unreasonable things." All of a sudden, the Silverette's heart and head were in a turmoil of emotions now. "Fayumi just seemed so happy back then, but every time I see your face, why do I have to be the one to make an active effort to change? You say you want to change, but what can you do now?" he cried. However, before his father could respond, the villain's wails interrupted them and they noticed the hero police restraining him and take him away. 𝗁𝐵𝑟 dropped Natsuo back home. It was late, and after that incident, he deemed it was much safer if the teen just spent the night at home and left for his college the next morning. They had already sent Midoriya and Bakugo off to their dorms. "You were attacked," Fayumi shrieked. "Are you all right?" "Yeah." Natsuo scratched his head, having a hard time believing all that really happened. It was an indescribable feeling, knocking on death's door but then surviving. "Fayumi, I've already spoken with Shoto and Natsuo about this." But 𝗁𝐵𝑟 began speaking in a serious but composed tone. "You've been working hard to build a home that your mother can return to. But I can't rely on you any more than this, so I've decided to do my part too. I'll find a plot of land close to your workplace and build a new house there. Please, welcome your mother home there." "What about you, father?" Fayumi had to ask. "I'll remain here." Once Natsuo was in, Fayumi looked over him to help him with any scratches or injuries. The tapes were tightened quite roughly, so the teen ended up suffering from a dislocated shoulder, but that was the worst of it. Aside from that, he was unscathed. Natsuo had to take the next few days off. He was glad it was the weekend tomorrow, but also emailed his professors about taking Monday and Tuesday off depending on how he felt. The doctor said he could take the shoulder sling off after a couple days, but to still avoid any strenuous activity for a few weeks. So, per Fayumi's request, he agreed to stay at home and the girl promised to cook for him. Monday morning, 𝗁𝐵𝑟 noted that something was off. Natsuo hadn't gone to college, and knowing the teen, he never took any days off. 𝗁𝐵𝑟 found it oddly suspicious that he took off around the time Endings was sent to attack 𝗁𝐵𝑟. The elder narrowed his eyes with a frown but didn't have the time to investigate it. The villain couldn't text Natsuo about it either, since that would expose him for stalking the other. Later that day, when the elder got the chance, he went over to Natsuo's apartment. He waited patiently for a good 5 to 10 minutes to scope for any movement or rustling inside the apartment. When he heard nothing at all, he glanced around the hall before breaking into the apartment with his spare key. He also noticed that Natsuo's mail was still untouched in the mailbox. The elder opened the door slowly, in case he needed to swiftly turn back, but the flat was indeed empty and abandoned. The kitchen was clean. There were no dishes or coffee brewed. The usual strong smell of coffee in the air was also very faint, indicating no one had been in the place for a few days. He assumed the teen hadn't returned from the Todoroki household since the weekend. Maybe his class got cancelled. 𝐹𝑥𝐸. He sent that dumb ex-con after 𝗁𝐵𝑟, and he may have given the okay to use his siblings as a scare or potential bait, but 𝐹𝑥𝐸. It hit different now that his plan was already in action and there was a possibility Natsuo got caught in it. He wasn't too concerned about Shoto. That kid could defend himself, but Natsuo ... he could barely use his quirk. If something happened to the younger, he was going to kill that tape bastard. The villain scanned the apartment by entering every room and exited the place when he found nothing. What was he expecting to find anyways? It was clear 𝐻𝐻𝐿 hadn't returned from home. The next day, 𝗵𝐴 visited the League lair and discovered that endings had been apprehended. Might as well. He proved to be useless, it seems. Moreover, by now he had lost his patience and took out his phone to text 𝐻𝐻𝐿. "What's up?" He waited a bit before the teen responded back. Oh, nothing, you never text first, oh. Oh well, he texted back, so that means he's at least alive. And likely safe. The villain relieved and began typing. Bored out of my mind, that was a lie. Haha, no more villain activities for the day. None are you in class? The villain asked to indirectly get 𝐻𝐻𝐿 to explain the situation. No, I took a few days off cause of a situation, I guess you could call it. Oh yeah, what kind of situations you getting yourself into? PSSH. Not me, I didn't ask for it, neither instigated, just bad luck I suppose every time. 𝗵𝐴 was tapping his finger, waiting for the teen to say it already. I kinda got hurt, so I'm taking off. At that the villain's eyes widened. He got hurt, enough to take off. Let's meet. 𝗵𝐴 instantly sent the above. What? Meet me tonight, same place as last time, that park okay. That's kinda abrupt, however. 𝗵𝐴 didn't give him a choice to decline. It's fine. It's not like you have anything to do right now, Rude. Around 9 p.m. 𝐻𝐻𝐿 stared at the text. That was kind of late, he thought. He wasn't a fan of the timing, especially after that villain attack, but then again, he did meet up with 𝗵𝐴 at 2 a.m. once. I'll be back, just going for a walk, 𝐻𝐻𝐿 told as he zipped up his jacket and pulled out his headphones. Okay. Just be careful. It's late and they said it might snow tonight. Don't stay out too long, 𝐴 said, and the younger nodded. The teen began walking. He vaguely recalled where the place was since he had to navigate his way back home the last time. As he walked closer and closer to the location, he noticed it was beginning to snow, the small specks of white floating from the sky to the ground, more apparent under the lamp-post lighting. He pulled his neck scarf a little higher over his mouth while his songs played. It was cold. He finally spotted a figure standing some 20 feet away. The villain hadn't recognized him yet and was standing sideways, looking somewhere at the ground. I see myself in you. The same shape of Bluey. He looked so lonely but so mesmerizing, especially as it lightly snowed and there was nothing but the dark night around him. 𝐻𝐻𝐿 stared, steps slowing down as the song continued to play. I see the pain you carry, and I want to be there for you. The teen was distracted at first but was beginning to process the words playing in his ears. The song that was playing at the exact moment the 𝗏𝗏 finally registered him and turned his face, locking eyes with him, his turquoise pearls gleaming like a light at the end of the tunnel. 𝐻𝐻𝐿's eyes widened when the next set of lyrics played. So let me ride away with you. Into the dark, into my heart, I'll follow you. 'Cause all of my scars are broken inside, and I need you. The words kicked in, and they couldn't be clearer in the moment. Like the lyrics had just clarified his feelings, clicking everything in place. The 𝗏𝗏 made a troubled expression, butterflies swarming in his guts as he temporarily halted in his steps. It was all coming together. He liked 𝗵𝐴. He was attracted to him. That's why he enjoyed spending every moment with him. Also, why he couldn't take his eyes off the other and why he was always so intrigued about him, other than the fact that he also reminded him of 𝗀𝐻, which was another interesting spectacle. The teen so badly wanted to hug him. It also looked like 𝗵𝐴's frail figure needed it, but at the same time that was expressing too much familiarity and he wasn't sure if the villain would appreciate it. Instead, the younger walked up to the villain and stood as close as possible without formally touching. Hey, why are you just standing there? 𝐻𝐻𝐿 posed. Isn't that my question? You just stopped walking randomly, like you saw a ghost. 𝗵𝐴 hummed. Or a zombie. He was pointing out himself. I was just distracted. How are you? The 𝗏𝗏 raised a puzzled brow at the question. Same as always, it's shitty. But hey, at least the snow looks tranquil. It's cold though. Aren't you cold in that? 𝐻𝐻𝐿 studied his attire, and all he had on over his clothes was a dark navy fleece hoodie. Maybe. Not that bad. I have better resilience to the cold, remember. Right, because of his body constitution, but still. 𝗏𝐻𝐿 had the audacity to hold the other's hand in his own. It's freezing. 𝗵𝐴 only scoffed at the gesture, also noticing how warm the younger's hand was. It felt nice, but never mind me. What about you? What do you mean? Where did you get hurt? You look fine to me. Oh, that. Just my shoulder. I dislocated it. I'm still wearing the brace underneath just for support. What? The villain deadpanned. That's it. What's that supposed to mean? It still hurts if I move it too quickly. You'll live. Elder closed his eyes in relief. That's when 𝗵𝐻𝐿 put 2 and 2 together. Wait, did he urgently want to meet up because I told him I was hurt? The teen was convinced it was true and could feel his heart darting in his chest, the warmth spreading to his face and bones. Suddenly, the 𝗏𝗏 bear hugged him, full of mirth. What the 𝐹𝐴? 𝗵𝐴 freaked. Get off me. What are you? You have a cute side too. Huh. but 𝐻𝐸 only laughed at the other's reaction to struggle out of his grasp. The teen finally released him after a long minute. "But you called to meet up so late. We can't even go anywhere to hang out. And it's snowing," he then said, dejected. "Nah, it's fine, that wasn't the point. I don't have time anyways. This was just on the way." 𝗵𝐸 straightened his clothes. "I gotta meet up with those losers soon." "Oh, okay, see ya. Wait, here." The Silverette immediately unwrapped his scarf and snaked it around the villain's neck, covering half of his lower face with it. "It's still cold." "Really you?" the villain began, but was unable to finish that statement, especially with 𝐻𝐸 smiling so earnestly at him. "Whatever, take care of yourself." He shifted away, holding the scarf once. "I should be the one saying that." The teen waved as he turned around as well, feeling giddy inside. He pocketed his hands, in a good mood, the smile never vanishing from his lips. "You're a little too excited," Taoya's voice pointed out in his head. "Shut up," the teen bashfully answered. The next morning, 𝐻𝐸 woke up with morning wood. That wasn't too uncommon, but today he felt like indulging himself. Sliding his hand under the covers, he began slowly stroking himself up and down. With everything going on in his life, he hadn't done this in a good minute now, but it seemed yesterday's good mood carried over and he wanted to do it. Soon enough, 𝗵𝐸's face was the first thing that came to his mind as he touched himself. Yes, he felt a bit perverse for imagining so, but he couldn't refrain himself as he closed his eyes and began focusing on the elder. His hand movements got faster as he pictured the Ravenet laying in front of him, naked with only a pair of black elastic boxers. 𝐻𝐸 had seen most of his bare body now, so he was able to fuse all the pieces together in his head. 𝗵𝐸's burnt neck, right shoulder and arms, his unscathed chest and abs, with a band of burn scars outlining the crook of his waist from his back, then his pale legs, the right one burned from his calf down to his ankle and left one from his thigh to his ankles, which almost resembled a type of stockings, and it was kind of hot. 𝐻𝐸 then imagined his own large hands spreading the other's knees, hand running down the length of his thigh to his leg, how the villain's back would arch with every touch from him. The Silverette swallowed hard, biting his lip and feeling himself close to coming. More, he wanted to do more. The teen flipped the elder over gently on all fours and reached for the elastic band of his boxers, pulling them down nice and slow to reveal one butt cheek at a time. 𝐻𝐸 leaned forward to kiss them. That was it, he climaxed, jolting and cupping a hand over his tip, squirting thickly into his hand as he quickly reached for the tissues on his nightstand. The teen huffed out loud. He was insane. Well, at least he was wide awake now. He blinked, getting out of bed and sneaking into the bathroom, washing his boxers and hitting the showers. Afterwards, the teen had breakfast with Fayumi, just the two of them. "How are you feeling?" she posed. "A lot better. In fact, I think I'm gonna go back to the apartment later today. Thanks again for everything these past couple days." "No problem at all, 𝐻𝐸." She smiled. "I just realized even though you stay over pretty often, we never really get a chance to sit and talk like this, just the two of us." Can't be helped. Busy schedules." 𝐻𝐸 picked on his eggs. "Speaking of which, how is college going? You're always occupied with something." "Yeah, med school's no walk in the park. I wish I could relate to that. Just don't overwork yourself and eat healthy. Outdoor food is convenient, but too much of it and you'll find yourself sick." Her motherly instincts kicked in. "Maybe I can show you some more simple recipes." "Haha, yeah sure, maybe later. I'm usually out the whole day, so it's not like I need too much food." "Still," she pressed, "have you made any new friends you can hang out with? I feel like you're always here at home on the weekends and busy on the weekdays, so I'm curious." "Fayumi, you already know that's not my thing. That's why I moved out of the dorms. They always want to get drunk, and I don't mind hanging out now and then, but trust me, you go with them and you'll end up being everyone's chauffeur." Fayumi laughed at that. "You're too serious, Natsu-kun. It's called enjoying yourself." "Ugh, yeah, no thanks. There are other ways to enjoy time." "What?" 𝐻𝐸 asked when his sister stared at him, with a look that wanted to say more. "Then how do you expect to meet people if you're always strictly on your own path?" "What do you mean?" "I meet people on campus or in class all the time." The younger wasn't following. "I mean, that special someone. It feels nice to have someone to share the burden with and just get comfort from." That." 𝐻𝐸 averted his eyes. That wasn't easy. He wasn't one to date loosely, but he also just happened to be in love with a major wanted villain. How was that even gonna work out? It's like it was all doomed from the start. "Wait," the girl's exclaim snapped him out of his thoughts. "Don't tell me you already have someone." "What? No." The teen automatically lied, caught off guard. Well, it was the truth, he didn't. It was all one-sided, even if a part of him wanted to believe that maybe, just maybe, the villain cared for him too. "Meh, you boys are not interested in any of that." She was likely referring to all her brothers. Shoto was training with the rest of his class. They were currently split into two teams and had to collect all their team's color ribbons, which were spread across and attached to a course of obstacle. Some ribbons being almost impossible to reach, but with the proper strategy, individual quirk utilization, and teamwork, the goal was to make it possible. Bakugo and Shoto happened to be put in the same team while Deku was their adversary. The teams were doing fairly well, and the dual-haired spotted another one of their ribbon on a tall, uneven stone wall. Shoto thought nothing of it as he began climbing up, hoping from rock to rock. However, what he failed to notice was the opposing team on the other side of the wall. The team was busy in their own pursuit as Gyro exuded high-frequency sonic waves, catching the teen off guard. The waves were at a close proximity to him and completely debilitated him as he clamped his ears with his hand. The teen also lost his footing, barely missing the ribbon, and began to descend backwards. Damn it, he was free-falling in no time. He had to activate his ice quirk before he cracked his skull, but his ears were still ringing. Before he could make a move, an explosive blast went off in the distance, and soon a pair of arms stopped his descent. The dual-haired looked up, amazed to find Bakugo carrying him as they flew through the sky. In one quick motion they landed on the ground, the blonde setting him down. "Pay attention," Bakugo screamed at him, right before blasting away again, flying back to the wall to retrieve the ribbon. Shoto frowned, standing up. It's not like he wasn't ... but wow, of all the people that would come rushing to his aid, he didn't expect Bakugo to be one of them. Natsu was back to living in his apartment and resumed his classes. He also no longer needed the sleeve brace but was still cautious about heavy lifting or overworking his arm. The teen was passing by the hallway in his college when he saw a bunch of flyers pinned to the soft board on the wall. Normally he paid them no attention, but one caught his eye. It was from one of the medical departments of the college, initiating a research and looking for eligible students in good academic standing to apply. Natsuo stopped in his tracks and surveyed the flyer. The timeline was short, and it would be great for his resume, the teen speculated. Additionally, it was good experience too. The research itself pertained to creating a quirk booster, and from the looks of it they needed help soon, indubitably because of the increased villain activity across the city. Natsuo noted down the contact email and reached out. In no time he was scheduled for a quick interview and was accepted right away. He was arranged to work on Wednesdays, since that was the only day he didn't have any labs. During the orientation, they were introduced to the professor in charge of the research, who showed them a tour of the lab, the equipment, and the chemicals. "Your help is very important to make this project possible. Therefore, it is vital to follow the exact protocols since we do not have time to waste. The outcome of this will not only help the Hero Society but the entire city. This quirk enhancer will assist in ending the villain's reign," the professor told the group. Well, I guess that seemed worthwhile, Natsuo thought, but then realized that 𝗵𝗊 was part of the League of Villains. This'll probably make things harder for them but this is the villains we're talking about ... They'll have more crueler methods to obtain their goals regardless. He secretly hoped there was a way he could pull the elder out of that world, but who was he to tell how the other lived his life, especially when he was already part of the League before he met Natsuo. So that would never happen. Later on, after exiting the lab, with his book bag strapped on, Natsuo bumped into an old classmate. "Yo, what's up?" The man waved with a grin. He was a year above Natsuo, but they shared one class during Natsuo's first year in college and got along pretty well. However, since his second year started, he never ran into the other and got busy in his own schedules. Hey, Matsu, how's it going, man?" The silverette fist bumped him. "What have you been up to?" "Nothing, just the usual classes. And then I joined a research group just now." "What about you?" The teen shrugged. "That's great. Look at you." The brunette patted him on the shoulder. "By the way, I don't see you at the hangouts at all. You should celebrate here and there." "Huh? I don't know about that." "Oh, come on, Todoroki." The other hooked an arm over the younger's shoulder. "You're just gonna burn yourself out at this rate. Actually, you want to join us today? A few friends and I are gonna have some dinner and maybe some drinks after. You probably know half of them," he urged. Natsu looked at the time. It was close to 6 p.m. The silverette found it exceptionally difficult to refuse while the other stared at him with starry eyes. Sure, okay, he ultimately gave in. Once in a while wouldn't hurt, he supposed. It had been a while since he hung out with a group of friends, if he could call them that, and he was easygoing, so getting along with people wasn't the hard part. "Nice, let's go. It's a pretty casual place." Matsu led the way, the silverette nodding. They made it to a restaurant with a bar counter in the corner, so after lunch hours, the place was open to serving drinks as well. "They'll be here soon," the brunette told as the two of them picked out a table first. "On another note, some Natsuo eye candy I drew, hope you like it." They picked a table across the bar counter and waited for another guy and two girls to join them. As soon as they joined, the group ordered food and everyone began complaining about their classes, professors, etc. They hardly finished their dinner, and Natsuo was still eating when Matsu called the waiter to order drinks. "What do you guys want to drink? Should we go for the shochu special? They have a group discount." Shochu was a traditional Japanese alcoholic beverage. "That sounds cool," one of the girls concurred. "What do you say, Todoroki?" The teen finished chewing and looked up at him. "Oh yeah, sure, whatever you guys want. I can't really drink." He recalled last minute that he was still underage for Japan's standards. You driving? The girl sitting next to him, with long dark blue hair, asked. No, walking, but wait, you're underage? Natsuo nodded sheepishly. Aw, how cute, you're still a baby, haha. She gleamed at him. No, I'm not. I'll be able to drink next year. The silverette felt inexperienced all of a sudden. Matsu also laughed as the waiter soon approached their table and took their order. It's okay, bro. You can sip from my cup, he winked. Nah, that's okay. Why would he sip from your cup? That's gross. He can always share with me. The brunette leaned closer to him, shoulder almost bumping. How is that gross? Matsu sulked. Shut up. Once they got their drinks, the girl passed her glass towards Natsuo first. You can have a go at it first. I don't mind. No, it's okay. Oh, please, no need to be shy, big guy. Todoroki-kun, was it? You're too stiff. She stared at him with fixed, fierce eyes that, like a predator, that Natsuo couldn't deny. What? How am I? Then drink. The teen gave into the peer pressure and lifted the drink, bringing his lips to the edge and drinking a small sip. He was almost 20 years old, so what was the big deal, right? The whole table watched him like he was accomplishing a major task. When he finally swallowed, they clapped and cheered for him. His throat burned a bit and there was a lingering sour taste on his tongue, but he got over it. So, interesting taste ... Don't know if it's my type. The silverette thought out loud. The group laughed. You're quite the funny one. The brunette leaned over, hooking a hand on his arm. Natsuo looked down at her, her breasts mildly brushing against his arm. She was wearing a turtleneck and long simple earrings with dark glossy nail polish and lipstick. Overall, she wasn't bad looking. She looked mature and charismatic. Then what is your type? She asked while the others chatted amongst themselves. Were they still talking about the alcohol? I don't really have one. He averted his eyes somewhere on the table. Oh really? She hummed, while 𝗬𝗲𝐼's grin flashed in his mind once. God, he wanted to see him. He thought, with a faint blush. He desired to give him a hug again, squeeze the smaller villain in his arms until he started squirming from suffocation, and would pat him to release him. Natsuo internally chuckled at the memory, unbeknownst that the girl was observing him. You already have someone. She was sharp. What? Natsuo was forced to look at her. No, not really. You're an open book. She smirked at him, letting go of his arm and resting her cheek on her palm. Taking a big drink out of her glass, she turned back to him. You want to get out of here? Huh, yeah, sure. He awkwardly agreed. He was getting tired of the atmosphere anyways. See you guys, the brunette announced. Okay, thanks for showing up. Nice seeing you again. Todoroki Matsu waved while the brunette took the teen's hand and led them out. They kept walking down the street, still holding his hand, and somehow Natsuo allowed her. She was just being frank. There was nothing wrong with that. He also didn't want to come across as rude. They rounded a corner into a dark street and she guided Natsuo against the wall, leaning over him. Have you ever kissed anyone? The girl was brushing up against him. This was happening too fast for Natsuo to process, but at the same time he didn't know how to refuse. The silverette failed to answer soon enough because the girl reached out and held his cheek. With a cunning smile, she tiptoed on her heels until her face was inches away from the silverette's. Natsuo looked hesitant but couldn't pull his gaze away as dark glossy lips filled his vision. At the last moment, the teen averted his face. Don't be shy. There was amusement in her tone as she repositioned his face towards her, gently pressing her lips onto the silverette's, who instantly felt the sticky lipstick texture against his lips and automatically shut his eyes. Her lips were soft, and he wondered if 𝗬𝗲𝐼's would feel the same. The sensation was pleasant ... but it didn't feel quite right or hitting the spot. Like the kiss didn't excite the same electricity in him he imagined a kiss would. The brunette pressed her body closer to Natsuo's, whose hands automatically found her hips with nowhere else to put them. Before she could do anything else, a black figure passed them on the street in the corner of their eyes. The silverette's eyes followed to the street, only catching a glimpse of a black hoodie before it disappeared behind the corner. Wait, Natsuo broke the kiss, head now turning to the street. Moving her gently away from him, he stepped away from the wall towards the lamplit streets, leaving her perplexed. What? He heard her utter. Sorry. The teen made an awkward hand gesture between an apology and goodbye. The silverette walked to the main street and saw a figure slouched over in all black casually walking away. Natsuo didn't call out at first, unsure if he even had the right person. It could be anyone who was passing by. Why did he have a gut feeling it was the villain? Did he want to see him that badly? What was he thinking? He was paranoid. Natsuo sighed, prepared to turn away until his eyes fell to the ground. The man was wearing high ankle pants and Natsuo saw a burnt ankle. The teen's eyes widened and immediately caught up to the other from behind, grabbing his wrist and forcing him to turn around. The silverette watched expectantly, waiting for bright turquoise eyes to welcome him. And they did, kindling his spirits straight away. Even as the other was rotating, he thought it was too good to be true and maybe he was wrong. However, their 𝗬𝗲𝐼 was staring at him with mildly surprised eyes. What are you doing here? Natsuo voiced wildly. The ravenet blinked at him. Hello to you too. 𝗬𝗵𝗍 started with a basic greeting and the younger felt embarrassed, slacking his hold but not letting go. My turn to get food. The villain raised the bag of food up in his other hand. Oh, what's up with you? I didn't do it because I wanted to, he mumbled. Huh. The villain raised a confused brow, staring at him. Nothing. Sorry, I think I'm just a little out of it. Looks like he was just passing by after all. He didn't see anything. Wait, why am I even explaining it to him? PFFFD, I can tell. You're headed home. To the lair, 𝗬𝗵𝗍 answered, keeping his head low so the hood was shadowing over most of his face to conceal his identity. 𝗏𝗪 wanted to embrace him but didn't feel the moment to be right for it. His heart was racing and his thoughts were jumbled. Go home. The elder saw that and it almost sounded like an order. It's dangerous at night. 𝗏𝗪-kun, you shouldn't linger too long or you'll be devoured. He intentionally used 𝗬𝗪's voice to act like a spell on 𝗏𝗪 and it always did. The younger solemnly nodded and said his goodbye. While 𝗏𝗪 turned away, the elder stood and watched him drift away, smile slowly vanishing as the memory of the brunette hungrily connecting her lips with his younger brother played out. The girl held 𝗏𝗪's cheek as she came forward, pressing her sultry lips onto his. 𝗏𝗪's cheeks were a rosy red and per reflex he shut his eyes waiting for the impact. People were a bunch of cockroaches, always mooching off anything worthwhile they found. It was agitating. 𝗬𝗵𝗍 turned tail and walked back with stone-cold eyes. Looks like he needed to look out for his gullible brother. 𝗏𝗪 woke up to someone nudging his shoulder over and over, but his brain told him it was still the middle of the night. He unwillingly cracked an eye open to find 𝗬𝗪, young 13-year-old 𝗬𝗪 in tears. 𝗬𝗪 ... What is it now? 8-year-old 𝗏𝗪 groaned. He'd been through this too many times. It's Dad ... Why isn't he paying any attention to us? I told him I want to be a hero no matter what, but now he tells me to forget. He's the one who lit that fire in me. 𝗏𝗪 sighed. I hear you. How can he just ignore us like we're defects? Just because we're not like little 𝗠𝗏. 𝗬𝗪, go back to sleep ... Or why don't you bug Big Sis about this? 𝗏𝗪 shut his eyes again, wanting to resume his slumber. Are you dismissing me too, 𝗏𝗪? I'm only talking to you cause you're the only one who gets it. Women in this household are good for nothing. At least he gives you attention, unlike us. 𝗏𝗪 then retorted. 𝗬𝗪 looked a bit taken aback by that, and so he quietly decided to drop the issue, snuggling his small body close to 𝗏𝗪. The silverette, relieved that his brother allowed him sleep, and also scooted closer. The pair slept peacefully. The next few days later he saw a massive fire all across the news, blue flames ravishing the entire hillside. Their parents were distraught, and while they didn't announce anything, 𝗏𝗪 wasn't stupid. It wasn't hard to figure out from the news, the blue flames, and the grim fact that 𝗬𝗪 never returned home what was up. 𝗏𝗪 was shocked for days to come. Nothing felt the same after that. Of course, he was close to 𝗏𝗪, being closer in age and everything, but it was a different kind of connection with 𝗬𝗪. They played together often, and even when 𝗬𝗪 became hero crazy, he would still always return to 𝗏𝗪. That was somewhat good for 𝗬𝗪's mental health too. However, now 𝗏𝗪 felt like the one who needed comfort, but there was no one to give it to him. He was so lonely, like a part of him was cut off. Even if 𝗬𝗪 was the older one, he was also the smaller one, so half the time 𝗏𝗪 felt like he was looking after him. The silverette's brain didn't process 𝗬𝗪's death until that night when he went to bed, waiting for 𝗬𝗪 to show up and complain to him as usual, but no one showed up. The room was dead silent and dark, and that's when it hit him the hardest, that it was all true. 𝗬𝗪 was dead, gone from this world. The kid suddenly wished he listened to his rants more and consoled him wholeheartedly when he had the chance. Even as a child, the guilt was seeping in and piercing him like 1,000 needles. He turned on his side and silently sobbed at the memories and resentment, crying himself to sleep. What's worse, he had no one to snuggle with beside his pillow. 𝗏𝗪 woke up with a gasp and a thin stream of tears rolling down his cheeks. He didn't realize he was crying until he felt wetness on his face. The teen cursed mentally, wiping them away. Why did he have that dream again? 𝐹𝗃, not that again. He missed him. He hadn't had that dream in a long while, but ever since he met 𝗬𝗪, so many of those memories were resurfacing because of the resemblance. The silverette turned on his side and nearly jumped out of his skin when he saw what would have looked like a present-day redhead 𝗬𝗪, laying on his side staring back at him nonchalantly. You miss me that much? There was amusement in his tone and a grin across his face. 𝗏𝗪 exuded a tired sigh, closing his eyes while he was at it. He was beginning to lose his mind. Voices were one thing and he was okay with that, but hallucinations? That was another level. Maybe he should have listened to 𝗫𝗪's advice on some therapy. 𝗬𝗪, stop it. He paused heavy. You're not real, he voiced painfully, opening his eyes again and finding the bed now empty. 𝗀𝗃 finished his first class and exited the college building. He still had plenty of time before his next class and debated on stopping by the cafe or find a bench on their campus grounds. Look who it is. You just ditched me the other night. 𝗏𝗪 looked up towards the familiar voice. It was the girl from the dinner. Aw crap, so sorry about that. I just ran into someone I knew. The silverette turned to her apologetically. Yeah, I saw. You looked so transfixed and it didn't seem like you were coming back, so I had no choice but to get a cab. My bad, really. I hope you still made it home safe. Yeah, it wasn't that bad. I didn't drink too much. But you can always make it up to me. The teen nervously laughed at her assertion. Okay, how about coffee? On me. Sounds good. Are you free now? In fact, I am. I have class but not until another 30 minutes. Lead the way, big guy. The girl smiled. Natsuo chuckled at that and they walked past the gates, across the street into the cafe. They ordered their respective drinks and grabbed a table by the window. This place is so convenient, the silverette expressed. Agreed. She smiled back at him. You're a first year. No, second. And you? Fourth year. Oh, last year before you get your bachelor's degree? Nice. MHHM. The brunette nodded, sipping her coffee. She eyed him, wanting to keep talking. Natsuo appeared to be a really nice and friendly guy, someone who would show full devotion to his lover. Albeit right now she was only getting friend zone vibes from him. Maybe he was too shy to make the first move. The girl naturally reached out to place her hand on top of the silverette's, but his phone buzzed at the right moment, causing him to lift it away. I'm coming over, bored. The teen read the text, eyes widening a fraction. Darn it, he missed the opportunity to hang out. Sorry, I'm out right now. He texted back. A friend. Where? Natsuo responded with a. At the cafe, why? However, the elder never responded back after that. So, he's hanging out with a friend. That's new. 𝗬𝗲 brought the phone to his chin and thought, sitting in the lair. The excitement and curiosity was too much for him to handle, that he abruptly stood up. I'm so curious to see for myself who this friend is. Where you going? Toga called out. Just out. The ravenet deadpanned. Can I come? Tisk. Does it look like I want you to come? 𝐹𝐴𝐶K off. Oh, come on, shut up. In spite of his commands, the girl still followed, and at that point the elder didn't bother wasting his breath anymore. They made it to the cafe, standing a few blocks away, behind a pillar. 𝗬𝗲 wasn't anticipating this at all, to say the least. It was a girl. Wait, that characteristic blue hair. It was the same girl from a few nights ago. The villain blinked, watching them chat away. Natsuo was laughing away, which was no surprise. He got used to people real quick. You know, on second thought, I'm glad it came along, Toga-chan. The ravenet sneered big. Hey, really? But why? Never mind that. You want to blow off some steam. Drink some blood. Yes. Toga perked up at that incentive. The villain continued to smirk as he smacked a hand on her shoulder, bending down to her level while he stood parallel to her, staring straight ahead. He then pointed at the cafe. The cafe? Yeah. What do you say about that blue-haired chick? Pretty well, she's all yours. Go for it, psycho. The elder straightened his spine and patted her back, giving her a kickstart. She giggled as she shape-shifted into a random person and skipped to the cafe, 𝗬𝗲 watching expectantly for the action to begin with his arms crossed. The person she shifted into had a hammering quirk, and out of nowhere she smashed it right into the cafe glass. Instantly people began moving out of the way and screaming, some running outside and away. The silverette also moved away from the commotion, away from their table with the brunette, but Toga tackled her to the ground. Taking out a needle, she plunged it into the girl, who screamed to the point. The blonde had to plaster a hand over her mouth. Ouch. I don't mind the screams, but my ear is right here. Toga ranted. Stop it. What's wrong with you? Natsuo interjected, trying to pull her off. Who the hell are you? Stay out of this. The blonde instinctively looked down on the other, shoving him back a few feet. The silverette called the hero police in the meantime, but couldn't leave his friend like this. Instead, he hoisted one of the chairs and was prepared to swing it at the villain. However, at the last minute, Toga hopped off the girl, causing Natsuo to steady himself to avoid hitting the brunette. Damn, you're persistent. Maybe I should collect your blood. Toga side glanced at him, making the silverette grimace. In no time, police sirens could be heard getting louder in their direction, and Toga used that as a chance to flee. Natsuo couldn't afford to chase her as the brunette was still bleeding on the floor. Are you okay? The teen knelt beside her until paramedics rushed in and instructed him to step aside as they placed her on the stretcher and took her away. The younger tailed them to the street, right outside where the ambulance was situated. Although, before he could insist on going with, a random person bumped his shoulder. Oh, sir, follow me. A very familiar silhouette wearing a black hoodie and mask ordered. The teen's eyes widened when he recognized the villain. It's not safe here. Duh. The silverette stopped himself and followed the other away from the site. What's going on? Do you know her? 𝗬𝗲 shrugged. I tried to warn her. Natsuo shook his head in disbelief. She's just crazy, has her mental breakdowns now and then. Shouldn't you stop her? Impossible. Once she gets her blood, she'll be fine though. So it's all safe now. Safe? That's far from being safe. That was still dangerous. Geez. The younger exhaled. You guys are like a bunch of lunatics on the loose to strike whenever. Oh, even me. Natsuo realized he accidentally slipped up and a terror washed over his face. Oh no, I mean everyone besides you. He instantly panicked. The villain only laughed in response. You might be right. No, sorry, I didn't mean. Ugh. The younger's shoulders slumped forward. He sucked at this. Why? He had no trouble talking to that girl just now, but when he had to answer to 𝗃𝗍, it's like he was always one step ahead of him. On a side note, don't try to fight battles you can't win. .. Well, I can't just stand there. Your family would prefer you stand there. 𝗃𝗍 reminded. He had a point. It was easy to get very injured or even killed from attacks like these. He already got kidnapped once. He probably shouldn't meddle too much. _Natsuo sighed at the thought. I'm weak. You're not. Far from that. But yeah, not tactful enough for battle. You're just not one of us or them. I wouldn't worry your little head over it. Just live your normal life. The silverette just listened to his words of advice for the time being. He opened his mouth to say something, but 𝗃𝗍 beat him to it. Well, your place is here. Natsuo looked up to confirm. He didn't even notice they were walking in that direction. Oh, yeah. See you then. The villain bobbed his head once in acknowledgement. The silverette took a few steps forward, but this time he abruptly hugged the other before he left. Hey, okay. The villain patted his side consolingly. Natsuo continued to squeeze him, as the side of his face brushed against spiky black hair. God, he wanted to kiss him, but he just couldn't. It didn't feel like the time or place was right. Hence, the silverette let him slip out of his arms, a weird caving feeling conquering his chest, like he wasn't going to see the elder again or something. Despite all that, Natsu couldn't bring himself to say anything. 𝗃𝗍 waved once before turning away. The younger's gaze fell to the ground. This was so complicated. He couldn't pursue 𝗃𝗍 like a normal person because he was a villain. There was no way. And even if by a miracle, 𝗃𝗍 agreed, they couldn't interact or hang out in public. Fog. Natsuo huffed as he neared his apartment door. Why did he have to fall for the wrong person? Class 1A was going on a trip. It was a weekend getaway with training and workshops. Moreover, they had been training very hard and deserved a mini trip. As long as they completed all their tasks, they were allowed to spend the last day, Sunday, as they wished. The school rented out a small 𝗃𝗏 with a backyard. The class woke up early for the first day to make fluffy Japanese pancakes outdoors in the backyard. Ada and Uraraka were in charge and led the way. The class settled in front of their workstations with bowls of batter and a fry pan over single stovetops. Shoto glanced to his left side to watch Deku pour the batter onto his pan of oil. Learning from him, he similarly poured in the same manner to assure the perfect shape. 𝐹𝐴𝐶K. This is dumb. A string of curses startled him from his right side as he saw Bakugo's pancake all irregular in the pan with buds of batter sinking in the oil. That's too much oil, Shoto voiced out loud, staring at the blonde's mess in amazement. Even he knew that. What? Bakugo turned his way. You have to pour it slow and steady, right in the center, don't just dump it. The blonde tried again, but still messed it up. Wow, how can someone be so bad? Is he doing this on purpose? The dual-haired thought. You wanna die. Why would I do that on purpose? Apparently Shoto had said that out loud unknowingly. Feeling a tad guilty, Shoto took a step in his direction. Okay, here I'll show you. The dual quirk user poured out some oil from the blonde's pan first before lifting the bowl and demonstrating. Bakugo took the opportunity to lean closer, looking over the other teen's shoulder, but instead of watching the pan he gazed at Shoto's focused expression. Shoto unexpectedly turned his face towards the blonde after he was done and was momentarily alarmed to find their faces centimeters away from each other, noses almost brushing if either of them moved. What? Bakugo jolted backwards to fight the embarrassment but bumped his elbow against his bowl and dropped it on the floor. The teens impulsively stepped away, but the batter still splattered on their pants. Just 𝐹𝐴𝐶. Great. What are you guys doing? Is everything okay? Ada walked over to their station. What does it look like? This is stupid. Shoto sighed. They should get changed before they sat down for breakfast. After they changed and returned to the tables outside, they quietly sat down and began eating their breakfast, along with the pancakes they made. The blonde didn't say anything for the rest of the morning and chugged in silence. Is it just me, or he's acting weird? Shoto inevitably thought. The next day would be their last day, and they were allowed to enjoy their time. The teens ended up going to the nearby amusement park, taking pictures, enjoying rides, and eating cotton candy. It's so crowded. Bakugo complained as he fanned his shirt and glanced to his side, seeing Shoto and Deku eating an ice cream bar. Give me some. The blonde had the audacity to grab the dual-haired teen's wrist and took a bite. Better. He licked his thumb with the same frown, feeling internally satisfied though. You could have just bought your own. Shoto deadpanned after a brief speechless pause. Too much work. Bakugo disregarded before getting dragged by Kirishima to another roller coaster ride. Midoriya, Shoto called out, watching as the blonde left with the redhead, expressions as animated as ever. Yeah, Todoroki-kun. What's wrong? Deku answered. Is it just me, or have you noticed Bakugo has been acting weird lately? The green-haired put a finger on his chin. Now that you mention it, I think it's only when he's around you. I've never noticed anything out of the ordinary when he's with the others. But then again ... he's always obnoxious, so it's hard to tell, haha. Sh0ʔo furrowed his brows. Do you think he's still holding a grudge because I won't allow him a rematch? The teen referred to the final match of the US sports tournament. ... I don't know, but ... that seems like history now, don't you think? I guess. Maybe I'm just overthinking it. I just can't explain his behavior, that's all. It's just Kakin being Kakin. Don't think too much about it. Deku grinned with a wave. Right, Sh0ʔo concurred. Come on, Todoroki-kun. You almost got it. Gyro and Uriaraka cheered on the sidelines. Yeah, go man. Kaminari added to the mix. It'd probably be much easier to focus without all the shouting. Sh0ʔo closed his eyes and thought, before opening them and tuning out all the noise. Currently they were in the middle of a game booth, where they had to pick out as many fish as possible with one net, and it was Sh0ʔo's turn. The teen laser focused on the fish before him, and when the timer went off, flailed his net in one quick motion. Wow, 20. Momo called out after Sh0ʔo lifted his net out of the water. Looks like we have a winner, the worker behind the booth exclaimed, clapping her hands. You just won an exclusive All Might keychain. She unhooked a palm-sized keychain and handed it to the teen. What was he going to do with this? He thought, while his classmates congratulated him and took turns after. Should I give it to Deku? He'd love it. The teen stared down at the grinning flashy All Might keychain until he bumped into someone and accidentally dropped it. Hey, watch where you're going. A pair of guys grumbled as they walked off. Pardon me. Sh0ʔo expressionlessly bowed before he turned around to scout his fallen object. However, someone already beat him to it. What the hell is this? It just so happened to be Bakugo, who lifted the object from the ground. I won that as a prize, but I was thinking of just giving it away. Sh0ʔo explained, averting his face. This thing, to who? Midoriya-kun, most likely. The blonde continued to stare at the keychain. Unless you would like it. Like hell I would. Bakugo's cheeks reddened a small fraction as he glared at the dual-haired. Okay, Sh0ʔo mouthed, but also noted that the blonde hadn't let go of the keychain. That wimp has plenty of these. If you don't want it, I'll hold on to it. The blonde brazenly stuffed the thing in his pocket. It could technically be considered a gift from Sh0ʔo. Sh0ʔo refrained a smile tugging on his lips. Is this the definition of a tsundere? Really, I can never know what to expect from him. Sure, please take care of it then. The dual-haired beamed, causing the blonde to look away with a huff. Natsuo was working in the research lab, following the protocols for mixing the given ingredients in a flask. Doing so, he noticed a compound on the list. Wait, that looks familiar. Natsuo stared at the chemical substance but couldn't put his finger on it. Oh well, the teen brushed it off for now, peeling off his gloves and signing out once he was finished. Later that evening, he recalled the name again and decided to search it up while he had nothing better to do. What the? It was an anti-quirk. That didn't make sense. Natsuo double-checked, but the main ingredient indeed functioned as an anti-quirk. But the serum was supposed to be a booster. The Silverette sat in his room and thought. Then again, he wasn't the expert. Maybe it had other properties. Hey mom. Natsuo visited his mom with Fayumi that weekend, for a change. Natsuo, it's nice to see you finally. Rei spoke from the bed in her hospital room. Sorry, I know I missed last week and Fayumi came alone. I've just been busy. Either that or he's hiding something or someone. His sister slyly added. What, sis? You know there's nothing like that. The teen rebutted with a flushed face, though it didn't help since he did have someone in mind. I also just joined a research project at my college, so that's an extra task on my list. There he goes, overworking himself again. Fayumi shook her head. It'll look great on my resume and is good experience, Fayumi, especially in the medical field. You wouldn't understand. That's great, Natsuo. I don't mind if you skip a visit here or there. You have a life that you're making for yourself out there. Rei chimed in. Thanks, Mom. He smiled, all the while glancing to the window, noticing some flowers in a water bowl. Did Sh0ʔo bring these again? That's right, his mother responded. He does it quite often. Next to the water bowl was a small vase with Rei's favorite flowers, rindews, inside. And those, Natsuo pointed out. And father's been here. Fayumi posed. Apparently, he's the only one who knows about that flower. Though I've never met him, but he always drops them off. Who is he trying to fool? Natsuo clicked his tongue. I think he's trying to realize his shortcomings and try to change. And to me that's proof of that. What? Just a bunch of flowers. Natsuo, Fayumi mouthed. Not just any flowers. They're my favorite flowers and I only ever mentioned that to him once. Rei elaborated. Whatever, he can change now. But it's still not going to change the fact that he killed 𝗀𝐻. Natsuo deadpanned, leading to momentary tense silence. The siblings stuck around for a bit before leaving after a while. The next time Natsuo was working in the lab, his mixture was boiling, and he had some downtime. The anti-quirk chemical plagued his mind again. He was working alone today, so he flipped through the directory textbook to go through the chemical's properties, interactions, purpose, etc. He was positive that wasn't for any quirk booster serum. In fact, all the other chemicals that were mixed with the main substance only further enhanced the anti-quirk property. The Silverette was majorly suspicious. Something wasn't right. He took the flask off for the mixture to cool down before he took his private investigation to the next step. He walked over to the computer in the lab, which to his shock wasn't locked at all. The professor must have just stepped out for a moment or someone else forgotten. He shouldn't ... but why was he so curious? The teen went into the folders for starters. Maybe because he didn't care to be involved in hero stuff, but if he was going to, then it had to be for the right reason. There were so many folders, and his eyes were moving fast, skimming through the file names to spot anything relevant. He found the one with the project name and clicked on it to find even more individual folders. All of them were named uniquely, but he was quick to discover none of them had hero names. How? Firstly, he didn't see Shoto's or Endeavor's name in the alphabetically ordered folders. Secondly, his eyes caught the name 𝗘𝗍𝗿 real quick. Therefore, he assumed the rest were villain names as well. He instantly opened the 𝗘𝗍𝗿 folder and revealed a PDF. Clicking on it, it displayed 𝗘𝗍𝗿's basic profile, along with quirk abilities, weaknesses, etc. that didn't make sense even further. Why were villains here? 𝗫𝐻 was perplexed. If they were making quirk enhancers, shouldn't hero names be here? Unless the truth about the chemical being an anti-quirk was the main purpose after all. 𝗫𝐻 closed out of all the folders, his mixture stone cold by now. It was all a cover-up ... This was meant to be used against the villains after all. 𝗫𝐻 finished his daily tasks and went straight home after. Hey Shoto ... Did the Hero Society ever mention anything about a quirk enhancer? 𝗫𝐻 asked one evening while he was at home. No, Shoto was completely oblivious. If there was such a thing, I would be one of the first to know, since I work at Endeavor's agency and all. I see. Why? Nothing. Don't worry about it. The Silverette waved. Just saw something in college. You're normally never interested in hero stuff, Shoto pointed out. I'm not ... If anything, what I'm intrigued about pertains to the villains more, he muttered. The younger only raised a brow. Shiggy, I have news. Toga entered the league lair dressed in casual female clothes with a skirt and tie. They're really interesting. What the heck? Just get on with it. Shigaraki grunted. You won't believe what I found. The heroes are so sly. They're trying to make some sort of booster for their quirks. They're cheaters. So pathetic. Can't even rely on their own abilities. She cooed. What? Their leader did a double take on that. How'd you find that? That girl whose blood I collected the other day at the cafe. Well, I was bored, so I thought, why let the blood go to waste, so I shapeshifted into her and went to her college. I usually would prefer to go to Izuku-kun at UA, but while I was passing the hallways of the college and reading boring flyers, I saw one that was looking for students to take part in a research. They were creating a drug for the heroes. Unbelievable, those snakes. Shigaraki bit his thumbnail. They're so annoying. Hey, they'll probably need it. 𝗘𝗍𝗿 mocked. What should we do? Hirajiri inquired. It's obvious. We pay them a visit, steal it, and give them a taste of their own medicine. Their leader glared. The others agreed in silence. Natsu and his group chat were blowing up Natsuo's phone. Apparently, it was Matsu's birthday and he had invited a bunch of them, including Natsuo, to a party. From what he read, it was taking place in a club in the evening. Natsuo was about to make an excuse since he didn't drink anyway. But his friend immediately responded with, No way man, no excuses, are definitely coming. Or else I'm gonna expose you to the whole school. The Silverette gawked and texted back. Expose what? I didn't even do anything shady. Speaking of shady, this is the location of the party, club, I heard the area's not that strict, so if you wanna enjoy yourself, you can too. Natsuo rolled his eyes and eyed the address. Didn't look familiar, but the zip code did look a tad familiar. The evening of, Natsuo found his way to the club. It was in a mildly questionable neighborhood, and even from afar he could hear music blasting and lights flashing. There was a crowd outside, people going in and out. The Silverette pushed through and whipped his head around to spot his old classmate. It was so crowded. What was the deal? And then there were people dancing in the middle and grinding on each other while others stood around, chatter or lounged on the sofas and tables. Natsuo looked around but couldn't find any signs of his friend or classmates, and it was no easier with the amount people pushing against him. Did he get the place wrong? The Silverette scratched his neck while he found a corner to stand in. The disco flashing lights were already beginning to give him a headache. Should he just bail? The teen pondered. Yeah, I'm just gonna leave and tell him I couldn't find the place. The Silverette made his way to the door again. Who knew getting out was just as hard as getting in with all these hype folks around him. However, right when he made it to the door, he involuntarily collided with a group entering the place. Natsuo was about to sidestep to allow them to enter before he exited the club once and for all. But he froze when he recognized 𝗘𝗍𝗿 right in front of him. The Ravenet was smirking until his turquoise eyes looked up and met his shocked gray ones, halting in place too. What the hell is Natsuo doing here? The villain fretted. What's the holdup? Someone you know. A villain with purple hair that Natsuo didn't recognize peered from behind 𝗘𝗍𝗿. No, the 𝗏𝗟 began but was cut off. Hi, nice to meet you. The 𝐴 had no idea why he just introduced himself. He already knew full well not to get involved with 𝗵𝗏's world or business, but when the 𝗏𝗟 nearly dismissed him, his mouth spoke on its own. 𝗵𝗏 clicked his tongue at his naivety. Who are you? A friend? You sure don't look like you belong here. The same villain asked. Something like that. I just happened to be here. ⴘ told with a fake smile. Look at that. He does have friends, haha. The villain laughed, turning back towards the rest of them once, while poking 𝗵𝗏 with a shoulder. 𝐹𝐴 off. 𝗵𝗏 shoved away. You leaving or something? The night just started. The purple-haired turned back to ⴘ, who considered his options. No, I was ... just looking for something. ⴘ answered, but his eyes were on 𝗵𝗏, who did not look happy at all. The teen secretly bit his lip. He just saw the elder and automatically wanted to spend some time with him. He didn't know when they'd ever see each other again anyway. He was aware 𝗵𝗏 was going to be pissed at him later for meddling, but he'd take that chance. For now. Oh, you're a cutie. Is that your natural hair color? This time a girl with a high ponytail and red hair peeked out from behind them. Yeah, they are. Okay guys, we can't keep blocking the way here, let's go inside. The purple-haired villain extended his arms and gestured them to go deeper into the club. They went all the way to the back with the couches. Was 𝗵𝗏 hanging out today? Or were these guys villains too? He just assumed, but they seemed genuine. You should hang out with us, the girl invited. Is that okay? I might be imposing. I can just leave. ⴘ pointed his thumb somewhere away, ready to turn. It was beginning to weigh on him on how big of an idiot he was for interacting with them like this all on his own. Nonsense, she practically pushed him onto the couch. ⴘ straightened up but was immediately raided by the girl straddling his lap, arms hooking over his neck. You're quite a catch, can we keep him? She momentarily turned to the others. The purple-haired villain didn't look like he cared. In fact, he appeared amused. Meanwhile, 𝗵𝗏 was staring at the pair with icy cold eyes. The 𝐴 blushed, grabbing her arms, prepared to gently pull them off and explain how uncomfortable this was. You're big, the girl praised, referring to his build. Where are you from? Albeit before she could flirt with him further, somebody yanked her straight off his lap. Hey, she squealed at 𝗵𝗏, who was standing over her before he took her place, dumping himself on ⴘ's lap, swinging his legs and sitting sideways. The 𝐴 visibly tensed at the 𝗏𝗟's body literally on him. My bad, I forgot to mention, this one's taken, 𝗵𝗏 arrogantly remarked as he planted an elbow on the 𝐴's shoulder. The girl stood back up, fixing her skirt as she stared at him. Oh 𝗵𝗏, you're sly. So that's what it is. You sure you don't want a threesome? I'm sure baby boy over here would like that. She grazed a finger under ⴘ's chin and the teen felt pressured, sandwiched in between the two. 𝗵𝗏 gazed at her more seriously now, speaking harshly. I already said no. Fine, the girl surrendered. I'm astonished. She strode over to where their other friend was sitting and joined him. Once she was away, 𝗵𝗏 exuded an annoyed sigh, but ⴘ's brain could hardly process anything besides 𝗵𝗏's weight on him and his hand instinctively holding the villain's waist. The 𝗏𝗟 was about to slowly climb off but noticed ⴘ's grip on his hips get tighter, almost impulsively preventing him from doing so. 𝗵𝗏 glanced at him and the 𝐴 picked up on what he had just done. The teen averted his eyes, embarrassed and mind blank. The 𝗏𝗟 scoffed at his reaction. He was so obvious. Cute. Didn't take him for the protective type. Fine, so what you guys find? The villain resorted to casually staying on ⴘ's lap while he directed his inquiry to the others. Not too much, it's hard to get hero intel. Maybe Sato could tell you more, he should be on his way. The purple-haired told. I think he said something about communication towers. The girl pondered out loud. Like destroying those would devoid all the heroes from communicating with each other. That way it'll be easier to attack them. She elaborated. 𝗵𝗏 hummed at that. It made sense. That way, while the other villains were taking care of the heroes in different sectors of the city, he could try and isolate Endeavor, having him to himself. Yes, there you guys are. Oh, who's the new boyfriend, 𝗵𝗏? The group rotated their heads to the new voice entering their circle. They saw a short, spiky, bleached-haired man standing cocky with his hands in his pockets. He had a few scars and tats on the sides of his face and neck. HMPH, you make it sound like I'm a regular at this. 𝗵𝗏 snorted. You're not. Well, the way you came onto me that night, I couldn't tell. Get over it already. That was at least 3 years ago. The 𝗏𝗟 rolled his eyes, not interested at all. ⴘ was now staring at the man though, studying him, his interest peaked on the other hand. 𝗵𝗏's ex one-night stand. Sato met the teen's gaze, looking down on him. He snickered towards the 𝐴's pointed gaze, challenging him on purpose, noticing how ⴘ's grip tensed on 𝗵𝗏's hip and pulled him closer. The younger was implicitly glaring at him. Anyways, you sure he should be here? The bleached blonde stepped away, throwing his hand in the air. Can we trust him? Yeah, don't worry about him, he doesn't have any affiliations. So talk. 𝗵𝗏 demanded. They began talking and discussing other strategies against the heroes, but at that point the silverette's mind zoned out. He was no longer listening to their irrelevant conversation and only sat there with his fingers locked on 𝗵𝗏's hip, who was still sitting on his lap sideways. After their small discussion, one of them ordered drinks, and while they sat there, 𝗏𝐴 felt like he couldn't hold back any longer. Maybe he was feeling bold holding 𝗵𝗏, his love, in his lap like this, and he really wanted to go somewhere alone. The teen wanted to kiss him. He wanted to bury his nose in his neck. He had already been bombarded with the others sent the entire evening. 𝗏𝐴 leaned in closer to 𝗵𝗏's ear while the others drank. "Hey," he whispered, catching the other's attention. "Do you want to go somewhere else? Maybe somewhere we can be alone?" The teen heatedly suggested, nose almost brushing against his ear, the black spiky hair poking his cheeks. The Ravenet turned to him, staring at him in silence before sneering at his boldness. 𝗏𝐴's breath got caught in his throat, heart fluttering at the villain, convinced that grin was a positive sign and all the signal he needed. The teen motioned 𝗵𝗏 off, and as soon as he did, he took him by the hand and led them away. None of the villains seemed to care and drank away. "So what's up?" 𝗵𝗏 mouthed when they stopped in front of the bathroom, the only place they could get anything close to privacy in a club full of people. However, 𝗏𝐴 was quiet, oddly stiff as well, as he closed in, gently holding the other's elbows and turning him towards him. The villain only gazed at him inquisitively. He stood nonchalantly until his younger brother slanted even closer, inching forward until his lips were touching in an uncalled-for kiss. Uncalled for, from 𝗵𝗏's perspective, who just stood there frozen as 𝗏𝐴's lips moved against his ones. 𝗏𝐴-kun, his younger brother, was kissing him, and he wasn't even drunk. The villain's eyes widened as he stared at the other's shut lids, brows frowning in the same frame. He was clearly serious about this. This wasn't even a joke. The elder came back to his senses when 𝗏𝐴's rough lips moved against his. 𝗵𝗏 gaped when the teen attempted to suck his upper lip, to which he retreated on reflex and shoved the taller away. "What the hell are you doing?" The elder wiped his mouth with the back of his hand. He couldn't do this. They were brothers. But why the hell was his heart hammering in his chest then? What? 𝗏𝐴 looked at him, flustered. He was still feeling the high of the moment, the heat, the tension, the passion, all of it. It was only fueling his primal instincts further. Except, 𝗵𝗏 pushed him away. Why? Didn't he want this too? Wasn't this what that grin meant? Did he misread all the signs? Wasn't 𝗵𝗏 thinking the same? 𝗏𝐴's brain was sending him in a million different directions. Why? "I thought you wanted it too," was all 𝗏𝐴 could croak. "What?" 𝗵𝗏 snapped. "No, what I said back there." The elder's voice broke and he exuded a troubled breath. "I was just saving you. That didn't mean I was into you, dumbass. ____TSK. That felt akin to a dagger stabbing the silverette's heart, closing up his lungs and taking away his ability to breathe normally. He was such an idiot. He had to get out of here. He felt so humiliated that he wanted the earth to open up and just swallow him whole so he could disappear. "Shit," he cursed. "I'm sorry, this is 𝐹𝑥𝐾. 𝗵𝗏 blinked once, noting that was the first time he'd ever heard the calm and gentle 𝗏𝐴 curse. Before he could say anything, the teen rushed past him. 𝗏𝐴. But by the time 𝗵𝗏 turned to grab him, the younger was already striding away, halfway across the club. 𝗵𝗏 clicked his tongue at the current predicament they found themselves in. 𝐹𝑥𝐾. How did they end up like this? Then again, he couldn't act too shocked. Undeniably, he was partly to blame for acting overly familiar as well, especially when the younger didn't know they were brothers. Any stranger would possibly take it the other way. Or would they? In his eyes he wasn't acting too flirtatiously, though he could understand that line was gray. Great, how was he gonna clean this mess now? When the villain reapproached their table, 𝗏𝐴 was already gone and nowhere to be found. "Yo, what did you do?" the purple-haired villain asked as soon as he saw 𝗵𝗏. He was practically running out. "Lovers quarrel," Sato mocked. "Shut up." 𝗵𝗏 scowled. Not in the mood. He stormed out, almost looked like he was gonna cry. The girl added her 2 cents to the mix, all the guilt piercing 𝗵𝗏 like a bunch of arrows. The villain resorted to leaving without a word too, back to his apartment. Damn it, hopefully he got home safe. Should I text him? 𝗵𝗏 mused, entering his flat. But saying what? It didn't feel fair after he abruptly left like that. 𝗏𝐴 was an adult. He was sure he made it home all right. The next morning, 𝗵𝗏 was up early, wearing his disguise and sitting inside the renovated cafe, secretly spying on the college entrance, waiting for a certain silverette to show up, who never did. At the same time, the said silverette kept shutting off his alarm, feeling like shit. He struggled to sleep last night, which came as no surprise. Dragging himself out of bed, he made his way to the bathroom. Catching a glimpse at the mirror, and yeah, he looked like shit too. He let out a sad sigh. It was tough going through a heartbreak. Guess they didn't exaggerate it in the movies. Now 𝗏𝐴 got a bitter taste of that. Although, he wasn't sure if it was fair to call it a breakup when the two never dated in the first place. But he still couldn't stop the feeling and how bad it hurt. He no longer felt like going to class or even considered himself focused enough for that. So, instead the teen ditched and went home. He had a spare key to the main home, hence entered the house at his leisure. The place was dead silent and abandoned, which was expected. Mayumi was at work and Shoto was at his dorms/school. After opening up a soda can and chugging it, he sauntered to the altar, sitting cross-legged in front of Taoya's portrait. "Hey Taoya," the silverette greeted, lacking the usual motivation. Then he simply sat there in silence for a good minute, face held up by his wrist. Where did I go wrong? How are people so good at this stuff? Courting, flirting, Natsuo closed his eyes at the embarrassing memories and blunder which was last night. I was an idiot to think he liked me back. No, he's the idiot. Older Taoya's voice spoke in his head at the right time. The silverette shook his head in response. What would you have done in that situation? I thought I was getting the right signs. If he doesn't want you, he doesn't deserve you, bro. Taoya easily remarked, but the answer wasn't enough for the younger. Easy for you to say. Natsuo concluded unsatisfied. Well, whatever. He couldn't mope around for too long. After all, you can't miss something you never had. Sigh, that just stung his conscience even further. Mayumi unlocked the front door, not anticipating anyone to be home, and so she was appalled when she found Natsuo eating a bag of chips in the kitchen. And Natsuo, what are you doing here? The silverette shrugged. I skipped class, didn't feel too good. Are you sick? Mayumi asked concerned, putting her bags away. You need medicine. Nah, just gonna be in my room. Okay. The girl instantly found his behavior as odd and dispirited. Weird, he seems so depleted. That's so unlike him. I wonder if something happened. See, you good. Was all the text he received from 𝗵𝗲, and Natsuo left it on read. He put his phone aside, conflicted and unaware of how to even respond to such a text considering his feeling. Yeah, sure, never better. Absolutely peaky. As if he could respond with something like that. It also sounded awfully sarcastic and microaggressive. The silverette sighed. It was well into the afternoon and he was lazing on his bed in his room with nothing better to do. Even if he had anything to do, his brain was nowhere near motivated. Natsuo, Mayumi knocked at his door. What? The teen yelled back from the bed before he watched his sister enter the room. What's up with you? I've never seen you this lazy. And you're skipping class. Are you sure you're not sick? Though there's no point hiding it if you are. She planted her hands on her hips. I'm not sick, I swear. I just don't feel like going to school. Think of it as a mini mental break I need. Did something happen? Not really. Not really. Silence dragged on in the room when Natsuo made no attempt to clarify or elaborate the statement. Okay, fine. Tell me about it when you feel like it. Also, Shoto's coming by later. Maybe you two can do something for a change. Natsuo hummed. It's not that he didn't want to, more like wasn't in the mood to. The afternoon was nearly over and Natsuo still hadn't budged. That was a new record. He felt brain dead by this point as he stared absolutely bleakly at the ceiling. Knock, knock, come in. Natsuo responded way too late, not processing the knock at first. Hey Natsuo Nyai. It was Shoto. Oh hey bro. The silverette made an attempt to sit up on the bed, automatically crossing his legs. The dual-haired invited himself in and sat on the edge of the bed expressionlessly. What's up? Nothing. I wasn't expecting you to be home today, Shoto told. So what are you doing? Did you need something? No, just chilling. They were quiet for a brief moment, the room feeling dead and awkward. Let me guess, Mayumi sent you here, didn't she? Yes. The silverette chuckled at his younger brother's meekness. It's okay, I'm fine. I don't know why Mayumi is making a big deal of it. Because it's you. It's very uncharacteristic. Natsuo exhaled. Fair enough. Is there something you want to do instead? I heard you've been in your room, on your bed all day. That must be a lot of fun. Haha, you have no idea. I'm going insane. The elder rubbed the back of his neck. Then, you have time? Natsuo asked, impressed. Shoto shrugged reluctantly. None of us will ever have time. I have some assignments from the internship, but honestly, with all the villain activity going on, I could use a mental break too. Natsuo smiled. Say no more. I hear you loud and clear. So what do you want to do? No, the question is what would you prefer to do? This is supposed to be for you. The dual-haired shook his head, reinforcing his point. When the younger gazed back at his brother, he swore he saw flowers and stars in the background around him. Oh, Shoto is so kind. Natsuo goggled before throwing his arms around the teen's shoulders. Yes. Shoto felt obliged to pat his back. The teens found themselves by the ocean. The breeze was chilly, but watching the bright blue ocean waves crash by them was satisfying. It's been a while. Natsuo marveled at the horizon, missing the notion. The sea was one of his favorite places to be, after all. Blue, even near dusk. The sun was still shining bright, glittering the surface of the ocean. The beach, huh? Shoto flatly repeated. It was evident that this wouldn't have been Shoto's first choice. Oh come on, isn't it peaceful? It's not too busy either. You want to get some corn while we're at it. I remember it being really good. Sure, why not? Shoto obliged, simply glad that Natsuo's mood was back to normal now. After they bought the food, the teens sat on the sand in silence, enjoying the cool breeze and the harmony of crashing waves. So, 𝐻𝐻𝐿 began first, for the sake of saying something and not obsessively ruminating about how much he 𝐓𝐡𝐷 up with 𝗵𝗃. How's school going? 𝐱𝐿 shrugged. The same. It's been a little hectic, of course, with the League of Villains coercing through the city, but it is what it is. Yeah, I've had my share of run-ins as well, unluckily. But you guys are working real hard. It's impressive. 𝐻𝐻𝐿 praised. It's still not enough. The dual-haired furrowed his brows. Focus. A certain loud blonde's command roared in his head. 𝐱𝐿 sighed. Looks like we both have a lot on our minds. Hey, I know. The silverette abruptly stood up. What? The younger was appalled by his sudden change in attitude. Let's go for a swim. We came this far, might as well, hee. The elder began pulling his jeans down. What? 𝐻𝐻𝐿 yanked his jeans off to reveal near knee-length summer trunks, as he then began to pull his hoodie off next. You came prepared. 𝐱𝐿 deadpanned. Come on, little bro. I'll pass ... Whoa. Before 𝐱𝐿 could say more, he was levitating in the air and thrown over the silverette's shoulder. 𝐻𝐻𝐿 only hooted in response, running towards the wavy edge of the beach to jump into the water. Wait. Okay, at least let me take my clothes off. They're gonna get soaked. Ha. Okay, the silverette grinned in victory, planting him back on his feet where the water raided the sand through and through. Really you? 𝐱𝐿 shook his head as he complied. While 𝐱𝐿 undressed, 𝐻𝐻𝐿 was already splashing in the cold water in nothing but his swimming trunks, enjoying the change in routine. This was exactly what he needed to clear his head. The calm before the storm. He's not responding to my texts, 𝗵𝗃 grimly noted, bobbing the phone back and forth before clenching it in his hand. Why did it annoy him so much? Afterwards, when 𝐻𝐻𝐿 did eventually return to his apartment, he made sure to avoid 𝗵𝗃 at all costs. Of course, there was no telling when or where the villain would show up, but he tried his best to keep an eye out and look over his shoulder. After classes, he would go straight home, not even hang out at his usual cafe. The teen simply didn't want to risk the chance of running into and facing him. He still felt hella awkward after their embarrassing last encounter. He needed more time. 𝐻𝐻𝐿 was sure this was the definition of being a coward, but he couldn't help it. It felt like the right thing to do. For now. On the flip side, 𝗵𝗃 was dying to run into the other and confront him, or to just tease him, greet him, see him, a glimpse, anything. However, much to his displeasure, things were getting busy on his end as well. He'd been swamped with tasks from the League while keeping up with his own agenda at the same time. A few weeks went by in no time, and Shigaraki was becoming increasingly restless. Some of the League members had already infiltrated and launched an attack in some parts of the city. While they did so, 𝗵𝗃 and 𝗁𝗏 were tasked with breaking into the college campus lab and steal the new enhancer serum. Stop wasting time and just blow it up already. 𝗵𝗃 rolled his eyes, impatient. Yup. 𝗁𝗏 lit a dynamite and tossed it inside the college building through the window. On the count of 3. A satisfying explosion went off, shaking that part of the building to its core. What was that? A student mouthed shakily. 𝐻𝐻𝐿 was working in the research lab today with another student. I don't know. It almost sounded like a 𝐻𝐻𝐿 started, but another blast went off, this time significantly closer to the lab because the lab's door literally fell off his hinges. We have to get out. The silverette pointed out the obvious. No need to tell me twice, geez. Why would they attack inside the college? The student was rushing ahead of him already. He had a hunch ... if the serum was any hint. The silverette mused, but before he could make it out the door and the footsteps of his lab mate, the ground and wall behind him detonated to crumbs. Shit. 𝐻𝐻𝐿 shielded the back of his head with his hands. Looks like they're either destroying it for fun or breaking in from the outside. Either way, 𝐻𝐻𝐿 wasn't willing to find out as he dashed out from what was left of the door. Not 2 seconds after he left and the smoke cleared, 𝗵𝗃 jumped inside from the destroyed wall, straight into the research lab. We're in, 𝗁𝗏 chirped. Whatever, find that dumb drug and let's go. 𝗵𝗃 glanced around. They were in 𝐻𝐻𝐿's college. What were the chances of running into him? Is this it? This was all I could find. 𝗁𝗏 waved 2 cylindrical vials in the air. Well, they did start recently. Doesn't matter, that'll do. 𝗵𝗃 shoved his hands in his pockets and walked to the hall. 𝗵𝗃, where are you headed? The exit's this way. The blonde girl pointed to the major excavation they created. The ravenet peered his head out the hall and glimpsed both ways, with no signs of students anywhere. Missed him again, huh? 𝗵𝗃 thought with distaste while he trudged back to 𝗁𝗏 and followed her out. They obtained what they came for and he couldn't afford to waste any more time. He still had a plan B to work on for himself, meet up with Hawks and finally face off with 𝗁𝗏. He couldn't wait. The pair brought the serum back to the lair and their boss had a chemist prepared to analyze it. So, can we use it? Shigaraki imposed the important question on hand. Nope, the scientist villain told. What? It appears they were fooling you guys, the chemist told. This is no quirk enhancer, in fact it's a quirk eliminator. The rest of League gawked at that new knowledge. The heroes were planning on using it on them all along. don't use it, but that goes without saying. They also made it immensely specific. This one in my hand is an anti-quirk for warping or teleporting powers. In other words, this would work against Kurogiri and only Kurogiri. It won't be effective on anyone else due to its properties. Basically, all of this is useless to you guys. The villain dropped the vial on the table, so they were going to go through the trouble of making one for each villain. Spinner voiced out loud, the dedication. That's crazy. So cool. Twice added his 2 cents in the matter while Shigaraki was fuming on the side. Let's tear them apart nice and slow. Shigaraki menaced and all the villains grinned in agreement. Hello, yes, good, perfect, thank you. Enji received a phone call from the head real estate manager while he was at the agency. At the same time, Shoto walked in with Bakugo and Midoriya, sweating in their uniforms. The two walked ahead while Endeavor called out to his son. Shoto, the dual-haired, halted in his footsteps to face his father. The new house is completed. You and your siblings should be able to move there now. Let Fayumi know and begin the move. I want you all to be able to welcome your mother there. Shoto nodded. Did you say Natsunai was coming today? Shoto asked as he filled the trunk with boxes. Shoto and Fayumi had already moved some stuff to the new estate but hadn't picked any rooms yet. They were waiting for Natsuo to join them the next day off to help move the rest of the luggage and get settled in. Yeah, he should be. Yo. Natsuo called out a few feet away as he approached the driveway. Excited. Hehe. Finally, come help us move your bags, Fayumi ordered. After they moved the rest of the bags and suitcases, the driver drove them to their new house. Whoa, it's huge. Natsuo jumped out, noticing the large main gate first before noticing a semi-Western and semi-traditional manor past the front yard. Security was important, so the entire perimeter was fenced with high metal railings starting from the main gate. Shoto held the keys and unlocked the gate before walking in. They walked the small path to the front door of the house and unlocked it as well. The lawns were freshly cut, the vibrant green grass shimmering in the sunlight. The siblings entered straight into a spacious living room that connected to a staircase that led upstairs and opening to a hallway and kitchen. The hallway introduced 3 bedrooms on the first floor, a dining room and a bathroom. Walking deeper into the manor, it also revealed a back door to the vast empty backyard. Natsuo made his way directly to the second floor. That housed 4 bedrooms, a bathroom and a balcony. There was also 1 storage closet on each floor. I'm taking this room, Natsuo called out, claiming one of the second-floor bedrooms. And the one next to mine is Taoya's, he immediately insisted, pointing to the room close to the balcony. The balcony wasn't connected to any of the room, but was accessible at the end of the hall, through a glass sliding door, facing the city and half of their garden. Really? Fayumi slouched, with a tone of, are you serious? Yeah, let's set up his altar in this room. Natsuo was 100% serious. Fayumi sighed. I get your attachment and stuff, but to have an altar right next to your room ... How are you gonna sleep at night? It's fine, it's Taoya's. Plus all the more reason. What if I want to stop by his room or something in the middle of the night? Natsuo reasoned with a frown, like he couldn't fathom why Fayumi would even ask. Of course, never mind, why did I ask? The girl shook her head. I guess I'll take one of the downstairs rooms. I was getting tired of constantly climbing the stairs in the old house anyway. What about you, Shoto? I don't mind. I'll take one of the downstairs room as well then. The dual-haired shrugged expressionlessly. Cool, looks like you'll be alone with Taoya's ghost then, Natsu. Haha, you mean my guardian angel? Natsuo taunted back. It's nice nothing scares you, Fayumi resolved before heading back down to begin unpacking. While the others unpacked and sorted things downstairs, Natsuo brought his bags to his room. Later on, he also set up Taoya's portrait on the dresser in Taoya's room with candles and an urn. The Silverette smiled down at the younger version of Taoya. I still miss you, bro. The plan was set in motion. They infiltrated the city. Namus were let loose on the civilians, and the heroes and hero students were all occupied in different parts of the city. It was perfect. 𝗫𝗫 intentionally avoided running into Shoto, because he didn't want to fight him and expend his energy so early on. Instead, he let the rest of the villains keep the little students busy. In the end, he had Endeavor right where he wanted him. The father and son brawled ruthlessly against each other. However, his nosy little masterpiece of a brother still found his way to their fight right in the middle of it. Great. He couldn't fight both Endeavor and Shoto at the same time, even if his flames were powerful. There was only so much he could exude and not completely incinerate his skin. The skin on his arms were already screaming at him to forfeit the mission. Wasn't he glad he had a plan B always? Speaking of which, is now a good time? 𝗫𝗫 pondered before ducking his mouth in his collar. Now, he whispered into the little chip in his collar. Well, I guess it's a good thing little Shoto's here too. Long time no see, the villain amused. 𝗫𝗫, Endeavor called out to him, prepared to charge forward. He was quite beat up by this point, but 𝗫𝗫 wasn't off the hook yet. What? The dual-haired gaped, but 𝗫𝗫 was inches away from the teen now. Before the younger could move away, 𝗫𝗫 hugged him, catching both of them off guard. What if I burned your masterpiece alive? 𝗵𝗲 threatened. 𝐀𝐦 this time, whose eyes were bulging out of his skull once he processed the warning. I shouldn't. I really shouldn't ... but shit. Look at that face. The Ravenet was getting excited. Heart pumping just taking in that dreadful expression on their father's face. I can't help it. I'll give him a nice scare. It's so worth it. While 𝗵𝗲 was enjoying himself, Shoto kicked him in the guts and finished the gesture with a punch. He wasn't going to just stand there and run the possibility of getting burned alive. 𝗵𝗲 regained his balance and landed on his feet, a couple meters away. Ha! Not bad. Shoto the villain wiped the blood off the edge of his face. The younger teen grimaced. There was something about the way he called his name. The sense of familiarity in his tone ... It was unsettling. Endeavor. Snap out of it. Shoto snapped at his dad, who stood there frozen. Keep trying. This is going to be my victory in the end. Either way. The villain smirked, fully aware that right about now the video he recorded was being played nationally all across the country. So even if he lost this physical fight, Endeavor could never go back to his normal life after the world found out about his past. Rei was on her hospital bed, listlessly watching her TV when the channel began to static. The video footage continued to seizure for a minute until it finally perched on a young man, sitting shirtless, his head hanging low behind his knuckles. The man in the video spoke. Todoroki was born as the eldest son of Endeavor.